The town of Farmington. Respecting history, planning the future.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. This is a joint meeting tonight of the Town Council and the Board of Education. And I apologize, I have laryngitis, but I will try to speak very closely into the mic. I'd like to ask you all to join us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would ask for public comment. And everyone would come up to the microphone that would like to speak. And you have 5 minutes, and please give your name and address. I'm sorry.
Okay, and also just a procedural issue. I want to make call to order the joint meeting on behalf of the Farmington Board of Education tonight for the joint Board of Education Town Council meeting for Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Annette St. James, and I live at 11 Brightwood Road in Unionville. My son Dylan is a sophomore and will never see any future changes to the high school before he graduates. That is not the point why I'm here. I'm here as a caring, tax-paying town resident to voice my support for immediate and long-term investment in our educational infrastructure. Our educational system in our town is one of the most important factors that continues to attract families to our community. I know this is true because in my work as a real estate agent, I see this factor play out daily. We cannot continue to keep kicking the can down the road. When the new high school proposal was defeated, we lost out on significant state funding to mitigate a good chunk of the cost, and that hurt real bad. At some point, I hope that the citizens of this town will realize that in order to keep Farmington as one of the premier towns in the state of Connecticut and to continue to attract families and businesses to our community, we must invest in our schools. Patchwork repairs will not address the hundreds of issues to be found in all of the schools in our town, elementary, middle, and high school. We can each make responsible financial decisions for ourselves and our families. And I feel it is long past time that we make the hard choice for our town. Taxes are usually something that people try to avoid paying, and we can all relate to that sentiment. But if the taxes we pay go towards a real investment in our children and the future of our town, then I believe it will be money well spent. That said, I also believe that we approach these weighty decisions responsibly, prudently, and with as much transparency and public involvement as possible to make the ultimate outcome palatable to my fellow residents. I see a lot of caring people here, just like myself. Spread the word. I think something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Trimble. I live at 20 Hendrickson Lane in Unionville. I do actually have children that will be affected by the high school no matter what happens in the future, but I'm not here speaking as a parent. I'm actually speaking as a Unionville businessman. A number of years ago, we moved out of our former home and we're looking at moving to a bigger house because we had more kids on the way. And we looked at the towns, and one of the biggest things we were looking at where to move, we wanted to stay in Connecticut. We were looking at Glastonbury, Simsbury, Farmington, Avon, and one of the biggest common factors of those are good schools. That was the number one thing on our priority, is to go someplace that had good schools. And we decided to stay in Farmington. We moved about a half mile down the road, and we really like it in Farmington. But as a businessman, I think there's a lot of people in their area making the same decision where to move, where to go. We all know that people seem to be leaving Connecticut as a businessman. It's important for me to have people stay in Farmington and to utilize our local services and things like that. I agree that something needs to be done up at the high school, and my personal opinion is that I would like to see something permanent. My taxes will be going up with that, but I think that it would be well spent on something that's going to be a permanent solution, not slapping a Band-Aid on our current situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's David Melman. I live at 9 Blenheim Terrace. I live there with my wife and 3 children, all of whom are or will soon be in the Farmington public school system. Thank you to the Town Council, the Board of Education, and the ad hoc committees for all of their hard work. I have come today hoping to represent and voice the sentiment of thousands of Farmington residents who seek a comprehensive renovation of our cherished high school. Cherished is an appropriate term, I believe, as it is clear that Farmington residents take tremendous pride in their schools. An overwhelming 82% of the respondents in the survey say so. I wonder how many other communities can say that. For a good portion of my life, I lived in South Florida, where we boast of beautiful beaches and sunny weather, but hardly wax poetic about our public schools. Perhaps when contrasting these two places, it is no surprise that we in Connecticut apply such emphasis on education. We, after all, do not offer glossy postcards with "Wish you were here" logos emblazoned over titillating vacation meccas. Without such plush accoutrements, maybe we can begin to appreciate why Connecticut is one of only a handful of states who hold the notorious honor of experiencing population loss. How can we stop this bleeding, the brain drain? How can we stop it? We already know the answer. It is in Connecticut's DNA. We are, after all, the land of steady habits. And what are those steady habits? Well, like our forefathers and foremothers, we give careful attention to our education. In 1827, the Boston Commercial Gazette described nutmeggers as intelligent, industrious, and religious, and of sober manners and conduct. It should be noted that the Gazette did not describe us as hedonistic sunbathers lounging about listening to Cheeseburger in Paradise. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that, with little in the way of surfboards and conch shells, what is one to do with one's time in the Constitution state? Well, I suppose one option is to be intelligent, industrious, and religious. How would one go about then, say, being intelligent? Well, I suppose attending a good school would help. Nay, not a good school, an excellent one. Why not, I propose, be the best school? To have a superior school takes funding, no doubt, but I argue that Connecticut residents have a long tradition of investing mightily in education. One need not look farther than our world-class institutions to know that we have been in the vanguard for centuries. Farmington in particular has just such a proud history only a mile down the road at Miss Porter's, a storied school that set the tone not only for pedagogy but for society in general. The 82% positive view that Farmington residents have of our schools reflects and rests on the commitment to education that the founders of this state and this town have had since their incorporation. We must not, we cannot, we shall not shirk this duty that has been passed to us. A tradition of the primacy of education, that every penny we spend today will return a profit exponentially grander. This dividend is more pertinent now than ever as power becomes concentrated into professions that require higher levels of education. Long gone are the days when a high school graduate can expectantly turn to the local industry for a stable, lifelong career. If, as Bob Dylan said, the times were a-changin' in 1964, well, he ain't seen nothing yet. In a matter of decades, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and quantum computers will eclipse our reality of the present. It need not be dystopian, so long as schools prepare our future generations for the manifold scholarly and ethical challenges they will face. FHS, as it currently stands, quite literally, will not be able to keep up with these new demands. And when the next wave of industries and job seekers look for a place to lay down roots, FHS can boldly exclaim, "Come to Farmington, we have awesome schools." The very same chorus that brought my family and so many others here in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Jessica LaCour.
Closer.
I'll try again. I'm Jessica LaCour, 3 Walnut Farms Drive. I've been a Farmington resident for 10 years, I have 2 daughters who are 2 and 4, and I taught special education for 9 years prior to having children. My family and I are very happy to be residents of Farmington. We think it's a great town to raise children and to feel a sense of community. How's that? Can people hear me?
Maybe put it closer to.
Close, okay. Since our town has only one high school, and a high school is largely a hub of the town, it seems imperative to me that major changes happen now. We are surrounded by other towns, such as Avon and West Hartford, that are leaders in sports and academics. How will we keep up based on the issues related to the high school that we currently have? We aren't investing in the building, we're investing in every single high school student in Farmington. It's clear that Farmington High School requires major changes and renovations, not minor temporary fixes. For a while, that method probably worked to accommodate the state and make sure the building was compliant with safety and other regulations. From reports that have been shared with me, our students are impacted by the lack of ADA compliance in areas of the school, such as the library and physical education. The wide sprawl of the school makes transitions between classes and collaboration between staff difficult. And considering a time when school security must be addressed, 23 ways to exit and enter the building is difficult to secure. I don't know all the issues related to improving our high school, and I know it will be expensive. But education and our youth should be the driving force here. Only fixing a few problems here and there when they come up isn't working, and it isn't enough. I'm in support of major changes to the high school and feel that it's our town's priority at this point to make Farmington High School comprehensive, accessible, modern, and innovative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think that's the key. Go close to the mic.
Hi, my name is Michael Accor. I'm also from 3 Walnut Farms, but today I'm speaking on behalf of Peter Master Batista, who sends his regards. He has been held up at work, but wanted to be speaking here this evening. He lives at 18 Church Street. And he states, as a member of council, I was solidly in favor of the new build-out option that was proposed, because I felt it was a long-term, financially responsible choice for the school as well as the entire community. I would not be supportive of a Band-Aid option that results in extended disruption of learning, a renovation that exposes unknown environmental hazards and associated remediation costs, or something that the community would need to revisit and pay more for 10 years down the road. I also feel that it is absolutely critical for our elected officials at the state level to work around the clock to ensure that Farmington gets another shot at state funding for this project. I would recommend that our state representatives and state senator be in constant communication with council on the specific efforts they are undertaking on our behalf, and that the council hold our representatives accountable for working to resecure state funding for our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Meredith Trimble from 20 Hendrickson Lane in Unionville. And I think most everyone here knows that I was and remain supportive of a long-term comprehensive solution for this facility. And that's in large part due to my 6 years of Board of Ed and council service, in which countless times we face situations of preventable negative outcomes, as well as increased safety and quality of life problems for Farmington residents due to earlier decisions to pursue only short-term fixes. While those fixes saved what I'm sure seemed to be large expenditures at the time, they failed to truly solve the infrastructure needs of Farmington, and they saddled us with exacerbated problems, fewer choices, and greater spending in the end. It could be, and I recognize this, a winning political strategy to say you fought an expenditure or you kept taxes low for a cycle, but that's just not always a smart strategy for ensuring the strength, safety, and vitality of a community for generations to come. So I urge you to keep that long-term vision in mind as you proceed. I personally would have a great deal of difficulty supporting or voting for a solution that would raise taxes, but that doesn't meet the ed specs, doesn't serve the wider community in a meaningful way, results in disrupted learning, has kids in trailers, may expose students and teachers to increased safety and environmental concerns, and would need to be revisited with more money down the line. That's a near impossible sell for me, and I'd assume for many others as well. Second, I'd like to remind Council that you have assets at your disposal that don't cost a thing. And those assets include an entire team of diverse community members who gave up hundreds of hours of their lives, literally, to explore every corner of this building and every possible solution presented. The hard-earned knowledge of the previous building committee members is something that's free for you to leverage to your advantage. The committee's community members from both political parties and a variety of demographics viewed the problems and solutions through very relevant professional lenses that I just hope you don't forget. They were a professional construction manager, an architect, a certified green builder and licensed professional engineer, an attorney, an educator, and more. And these individuals, in my opinion, simply should be asked for their insight and lessons learned. And I bet each one would tell you something unique and valuable. So I think that to ignore their knowledge is to leave on the table significant and relevant information that could very well save you and the town time, money, and repeated mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marcus Fairbrother, excuse me. I live at 12 Candlewood Lane, just over the hill there. In fact, I can see the high school from my backyard when the leaves are down. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the Town Council, Board of Education, and the ad hoc committee members for their work. I know it was hard, I'm sure it was frustrating, but I hope it was rewarding, and I do want you all to know that it is appreciated by everyone in the town. My wife and I and kids moved here about 3.5 years ago from Maine for my wife's work. We moved from the best school district in Maine. It was noted for its innovation, its student success, the quality of the teachers, et cetera. So when we moved to Connecticut, that was at the top of our priority list. It was a good school system for our 3 kids. My daughter is in 8th grade at IAR, and my twin boys are in Union School in 4th grade. So quality education was at the very top of the list for our family, and that quickly led us right here to Farmington. And we have had no regrets at all about the town and about the school system. The teachers have been wonderful. The schools have been great. So we have no regrets about that. Looking forward to high school, for us, it's next year. My daughter's going to be a freshman, which seems kind of impossible to me. I'm only 20, right? It's evident, I think, to everybody that this current facility is just not up to spec. A completely new facility is needed. We could try to slap a Band-Aid on this, but it's not going to work. It's not a sustainable solution in my mind. Excuse me, I lost my place here. I think all the options, and at some point they'll be presented numerous options, I'm sure, they're all going to require a significant investment. And I'm sure that includes a do-nothing approach that's not free, that's going to cost something. My hope is that when people look at all the options, they realize that construction costs and maintenance costs and debt service costs alone don't take the whole picture in. There's a lot of unquantifiable things, such as the impact of a physical facility on student wellness, happiness, success, achievement, retention of teachers and administrators and faculty, staff. Those are all things that you can't quantify in a line item that says X million of dollars. So it's my hope that when people take a look at that figure that comes out or figures that come out, they take that into consideration as well. We know that good schools create good communities, and property values remain high. We have a good population base. There's cultural and continuing education opportunities for everyone when we have good schools. So we need to maintain that with a good high school. Again, thank you to the board members and town council committee members and for all their work. But the hard work continues now, and I think continues with the people. And that is that they need to get. We need to get engaged, and we need to make sure that people that information is communicated well, that it's accurate information, and that those who are supportive of this project get engaged, that they talk to their neighbors, that they talk to their friends, that they write letters, and that they make sure that this project occurs and is a success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matt Hudfagner. I live at 4 Deepwood Road. I have 5-year-old twin boys. I'm here tonight to share my support for a new Farmington High School facility. Supported the vote last time and wish that worked out. Sounds like a lot of people did as well. I thought the plan was well thought out and was a good investment for the town. I do wonder sometimes if the state budget and the economic news that was going on at the time had anything to do with the voting results. And if we voted today, would those results be different? I look forward to hearing the survey committee and what the board and council's plan is, especially around sort of combating misinformation. I remember last time that seemed to be a big issue with the vote and the price tag and all that. Whatever the new plans are, it's going to be a big price tag, right? It has to be. It's a big facility, a lot of square footage. Over 12,000 students, faculty, and staff here every day. It'd be hard to sort of piecemeal a fix to the school to make the price tag seem sort of less big or reasonable. I understand no one wants their taxes to go up, but to me, a new building seems like the only solution. The reputation of Farmington schools is worth it, and frankly, our kids' education is worth it. To quote from the school mission and vision, the mission of the Farmington Public Schools is to enable all students to achieve academic and personal excellence, exhibit persistent effort, and live as resourceful, inquiring, contributing global citizens. As parents, voters, and taxpayers, I think it's our duty to provide them the necessary facilities to achieve this. I think we're all failing if we do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's tippy toe. My name is Stacey Petras, and I am 32 High Street. During last November's joint survey and finance committee meeting, it was stated several times that a political action committee would be necessary to get a high school referendum passed. I do not agree that the financial burden of passing a high school referendum should be placed on private citizens who donate to a special interest group. I'm here tonight to encourage the Town Council and the Board of Ed to properly fund all the communications necessary to pass a plan that meets the needs of our community and honors Farmington's strong commitment to education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott Mulvihill. I live at 11 Mountain Road with my wife, Linda, and our son, Mason, who is 7 years old and attends Noah Wallace School. We came down to Farmington from New Hampshire about 6 years ago, and during our 2-month stay at the Residence Inn in Southington, we looked everywhere to finally settle. We looked in Avon. We probably went to 100 properties, but when it came to Farmington, the thing that drew us in really was the school system. We're across the street from Noah Wallace, and Mason's having a great experience there. I'm here tonight as Mason's dad because looking down the road at what we have here in the high school, it's pretty daunting. And like many people here, I bring my support for a complete redo of this facility. When Linda and I got here tonight, there was a video playing, a student who was doing a presentation on the high school, kind of a tour, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to find that young man in this facility in the United States giving examples of ADA noncompliance where people in wheelchairs can't get to classes. Classes aren't big enough to accommodate the amount of students. It really shook me. I would implore this committee to make that video public, because as the gentleman stated earlier, had we had this vote now with that information, I think the outcome would be drastically different. Linda and I, about a month ago, made a trip up to Natick, Massachusetts to watch Linda's friend's son in a Fiddler on the Roof at their new high school. It's about 2 years old. They were in the same situation that Farmington was in. They did something that I thought was really neat. With some outside thinking, out of the box thinking, they were able to find blueprints from other high school projects from across the country, blueprints that fit their footprint. And they were it enabled them to go ahead with the construction and avoid all of the architectural fees and all the things that go into the construction, the planning, and those type of things. Saved a ton of money. But not only did they save money, but the state then matched what they saved and tacked that onto the allocation similar to what the state of Connecticut was going to do for us. And it wound up being a win-win. And I got to tell you, that place is a palace. When you walk into the auditorium, you're walking into what looks like something off Broadway. It's amazing. Their gym facilities, their home economics, their classrooms. We had a bit of a tour because the young man was so excited to show us his new high school. It really gave me hope that something like that could be available here in Farmington. Maybe with a little out-of-the-box thinking like they did, we could be on the road to getting that done here. Thanks for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Johnny Carrier, 1 Riverwood Road. I've been in town for just close to 17 years. I'm a former building committee member from the last building committee, one of those that spent many hours. I don't know if it was hundreds, but it was at least close. That being said, there's some takeaways that I experienced in the building committee. Is not enough? All right. Let me start from the fact that the first thing that I did when I moved here 17 years ago as a home builder, someone who's built a lot of homes in town, I looked at my house as an investment. Okay. Since then, I've gotten married, had 5 children, which my wife is currently putting all to bed. As the time went on, though, I learned, the value of the education. My family and I have built many homes in town for the last 40 years, and I have to tell you, I meet new people on a weekly basis. And specifically to Farmington, and not in other towns, but more specifically, I've been building these last couple of years, and everybody has the same 2 things that they say. I love the tax rate, and I love the education. And they're not always in the same order, but they're always the top 2. I have a lot of people moving from West Hartford for various reasons. The biggest one is the tax rate. But I also have people moving in because they value a high quality education. I used to, when people would pull me to the side on the building committee and say, what's your opinion? I was very reluctant to give one during the process because, frankly, I'm not from a school construction background. I'm from a residential construction background. And frankly, the numbers that I was seeing on the commercial side were scaring the heck out of me. I have kind of since the referendum, I feel like we and other building committee members put the best option forward. Okay, it was a kind of a long-term 50-year solution, which was what we were set out to do. The voters, the community spoke, and we can get into the semantics of it, but I take this away from my own experience on this. We are looking at another building committee, looking at the same issues we looked at a year and a half ago. I'm thinking that it won't be the full approach as we had in the past. So my advice is simple. Whatever project that you bring forward to us, if it's not a full project and it comes in pieces, I want to see a long-term goal. So if this does go over multiple building committees, over 2 or 3 projects, then we're not redoing or rethinking or wasting taxpayers' money while trying to get to the ultimate goal of having the best facility that we can get. And that's not going to be an easy one, and this is advice for people going forward. If we tried to incorporate everything that was suggested to us, swimming pools and extra fields and everything you can get, that price tag would have been double what we had presented originally. All I can say is we need an overall goal, an overall plan with milestones, with price tags that are realistic, so that in the future, maybe not right away, 5 years, but 10 years, 15 or 20, with a couple of different attacks at this, that we have the best, most economical solution to get where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, thanks for the opportunity for us to voice our opinion. My name's Jen Pulido, and I live at 2 Saunders Hill in Farmington. I've been a Farmington resident for about 9 years now. I have my own consultancy, and then I'm also a very new teacher teaching a few business classes at another local high school. So over the last 6 months, I have the opportunity to learn more about the Connecticut education system and also understand what goes into making effective learning experiences for students. I've had the opportunity to visit multiple different schools in the area, some in very affluent, towns, and others in the complete opposite. And I found that Farmington, the layout and the aesthetics are very different, not, in a positive way. And what makes it very different isn't so much, other schools are a little bit more modern and they're pretty. It's, because let's face it, right? We all want things to look beautiful and nice, but it's really the educators, the administration, and the students that really are the heart of the school. But what was really concerning that other schools didn't necessarily have was the sprawl. So it takes a long, I observed this school and I saw students coming in late for class. And there's such an important component when you first get in that class for teachers to activate, they call it a schema activator, which I'm sure, you educators know this. You get involved in the lesson and you create focus. And with so many students coming in late, what I observed was it was hard to students to kind of get into the meat of that lesson and to, work on that focus. And, certainly more research needs to be done to understand what is the impact. But by not having students there on time for no fault of their own, certainly was a concern. And when I took the tour in May, what I noticed that was a concern, but I noticed wasn't really brought up a lot, was the aspect of safety. So, I timed it myself coming in here. It took 1 minute and 41 seconds to get from the front entrance all the way to the cafeteria. Certainly that is not, the furthest end-to-end point. And we all have heard the stat, there's 23 different entrances, but it's not just the different entrances of outsiders coming in, it's also what's happening within these walls. Can a security person get to a situation, as soon as they possibly can? I don't know. That's certainly a concern, especially with, everything that we're hearing and everything that we're facing on a day-to-day basis. So between an environment that could do a better job encouraging learning, but also safety concerns, something needs to happen other than this expansive layout that just seems to keep on growing wider, as opposed to a different layout that gets people where they need to be on time, and then also if there was ever a safety concern, getting people the help that they need when they need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mariah Reisner.
And I'm Sam Reisner.
And we live at 41 Main Street. We are brand new to Farmington. We moved here in the fall, and one of the appeals of moving to Farmington is a strong school system. And our daughter has started at Noah Wallace, and we have been nothing but pleased. We are so happy so far. The quality of the school, the commitment to the students, the family community, it's been wonderful. And I guess that introduction is to say that young parents like ourselves, in my opinion, don't need a lot of convincing that the school needs, it needs to be accredited, it needs to be up to date, it needs to be safe, it needs to be thriving. But the number of families with school-aged children is less than 25% of Farmington. And so I guess what I think is important moving forward is that we have a strong case and a strong reason for the whole town to get behind the project, because that's what we really need. So I think that many of the people here that have spoken tonight have young families, have students, and we understand in a different way of why it's important for our own families, but it's also important for the whole community. So whether it be for performances, for meetings like this, for community and continuing education classes, it's also right now the shelter in case of an emergency, which, you can only imagine. Hopefully we'll never have to use it in that way, but the needs are beyond just students and education. And in a community that values education, it's wonderful that that's part of the reason, and I think that's an important reason, but I think to get the whole town behind it, there need to be other reasons.
And the communication to that is really important. I am a huge supporter of public education, and right after I left high school, which was longer ago than I like to admit, there was a referendum for a bond issue for renovations of that high school, and it passed in the single digits. It was incredibly contentious. I don't envy anyone who was working on that or you working on this. That communication is so important. And that is also a community that, just like Farmington, supports education and finds it incredibly important. And so it's really tough. But a year after that passed, the community, no one was talking about it anymore. It was done. They have a great resource. And that's something that through communication, hopefully we can get. This is my second time in this building. We went on the tour earlier and we actually walked around, and it's really great to see. You can see, obviously, the students, the faculty are not here. You can see that the threads that are starting in first grade at Noah Wallace, language, learning targets, circles, these are things that are continuing through, and that's really great. And I really hope we can support the students and the staff and the faculty and give them the infrastructure they need to be safe and comfortable and as productive as they can to prepare them to move on. So thank you so much for your time. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rufina Lee. I live at 3 Hamilton Way, and this is the first forum I've ever been to voice my opinion. I have a 7th grader, a 4th grader, and a 2nd grader, and I'm extraordinarily concerned about the facilities here at Farmington High School. My 7th grader is loving IAR. She loved Westwoods a little bit more, mainly for the air conditioning. And I know a number of families who have school-aged children, and I actually talk to some of them when they're not on their phones. They have lots of complaints about the school. The sprawl that a few people have mentioned, the fact that, I don't know if it's the 2nd or the 3rd floor, that is incredibly hot, has no air conditioning. We, like everybody else that spoke before me, moved to Farmington. We've been here about 10 years. My husband and I grew up in New York City public school graduates. We were fortunate enough to take a test, and we went to a specialized high school for math and science. We both did fairly well. We congratulated ourselves and moved as quickly as we could to the suburbs and found the nicest town, we think, in all of Connecticut. We want to have our children go to school here, specifically Farmington High School. I don't want to send her anywhere else, but these things are legitimate concerns for not only me, but for a lot of parents. What do we do about the building to make sure that it's everything that our kids want, need, and deserve? It's fine to say that we spend X number of dollars, and it's the lowest amount per student that we have in all the surrounding towns. But at a certain point, we're just passing the buck on to the next generation of parents, the parents that are coming up with the 2- and 4-year-olds, and the next people. We need a comprehensive plan to tackle all of the issues at once. I have neighbors who I love dearly who voted against the referendum last year. Why? They had kids that went through Farmington High School, but there was a lot of misinformation about the price tag specifically, what that entailed. Well, they asked us to pay 5 years ago and 10 years ago before that. What is it that we do? Like little piecemeal here and here and here. We need something that's complete. so that everybody can get on board. You tell people, sure, it's a huge number, whatever it's going to be. But if you're any home repair, for example, the plumber comes, this is going to be $600. But will my toilet still be leaking at the end of the day? Or do I have like a whatever that damn thing is that we had a couple of years ago? These are issues that need to be tackled. You leave that alone, things are only going to fall apart and get worse. Let's not get to that point. Let's rally the community, figure out what the plan is, communicate, and make sure that the right information, accurate information, is getting out into the community. And let's get this done for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kristen Mullins, 6 Pearl Street in Farmington. My husband and I moved to Farmington in 2006. Pre-children, primary reason was low taxes and excellent schools. My boys are 7 and 8, so we're very far, well, not very far, but we're pretty far from them being high schoolers. But we all know how quick time goes, and we know how much a project of this magnitude would cost and the amount of time that it would take. I want my boys to have pride in their high school. I want them to be able to pull up to the facility and be proud. I want them to walk down the halls and be proud. I recall the feeling of pride I had in my little high school outside of Rochester, New York when I was growing up, and I want that for my boys as well. I did not do the school tour tonight. I did it last year, and believe me, I had seen enough. I did not need to see it again. For my line of work, I drive around Connecticut a lot, and most recently I happened to drive by Middletown High School, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful updated facility. In addition, I recently drove by Maloney High School in Meriden, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful facility. If they can do it in Middletown and Meriden and value education enough in those communities, I don't see why we can't do that here in Farmington too. We don't need the Taj Mahal. We do need a high school facility either on our current plot of land or on a new plot of land. We need teachers who want to teach here. We need teachers to have appropriate space to provide all curriculum and all programming that they want to do for our students. We need children to have time to move from class to class with ease. We need children to feel secure and safe with one main entrance, not 23 ways to enter and exit the building. We need children to eat lunch at a normal time and not breakfast time at 10 a.m. My husband and I vote 100% yes for a new FHS. My children, our children, we deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert OvenLamont, 5 Sparrow Lane. I'd like to congratulate all the speakers that have come before me. I have very little to add. I wish I had prepared remarks. I'm disappointed that nobody has spoken up so far who's opposed to the high school. My parents came to this meeting 15 years ago and sat quietly and were disappointed, if not angry, at the parents of young children, who I would have been one of. My children are going to finish this school system pretty soon, class of 22 and 23. I have 3 kids. I appreciate what the town has to offer, but this facility is unsafe and completely inadequate. Nobody's mentioned the entrance and exit. P.T. Barnum of Connecticut, this way to the egress, he said, and people left. This is a crazy bottleneck. It's completely unsafe. There's something called the crime prevention through environmental design. We are totally inadequate and not meeting state regulations for safety. It is obscene. Again, I wish we had some talk from the opposition. There was tremendous sticker shock. Any number is going to frighten people. The voter turnout was excellent, 40%, but 5,000, 2-to-1 margin defeated this. So we need to have better education, information, and no misleading information. Both of these committees, as I understand it, voted very strongly to move, that the previous plan was reasonable, and they were in full support, with a couple of people who dissented without much discussion, one of whom I think most of you know, is out of state, resigned from the board, and so on. I think we need an entirely new location. This town is excellent. We're not going to have teacher retention. I don't know why our students do so well. I think it's the teachers. We don't pay the teachers enough, and they're going to leave because this place, for Farmington, for what we make and for our mill rate, this town is great. The school stinks. I think we need a new stadium. I think we need a beautiful stadium. I don't even like sports. That brings in community pride. I really don't. I was a swimmer. I'd like to have a pool and a hockey rink. I'm crazy. We're not going to get any of that. We need to be in a new location where you can get to main roads for safety reasons. You know, Sandy Hook, that might as well have been Farmington. Believe me, it's going to happen. Maybe not our generation, maybe our grandchildren's generation. But you're crazy not to think there isn't going to be a school shooting here or Avon. We need to do a better job. We're not, Connecticut and New Jersey have the most stringent requirements for school safety. We're not there. I don't know why we're not getting fined from the state. Clearly, I'm passionate. I wish the opposition was here explaining it. It all comes down to price. I'm sorry. You know, our mill rate's low. We have an excellent bond rating. We have money in the rainy day fund. We need to make some serious investment. Thank you. Sorry for the tone of my voice.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lisa Nolan. I live at 11 Hidden Oak Drive. I've lived in town for 22 years or so, grew up in West Hartford, but chose to move to Farmington with my family. Great schools, very comparable to West Hartford without the really high property tax. Love to keep it that way, like many people would, but I believe a lot in our school system. I've also been involved in STEM outreach for 10 years in our community. Over that time, I've met people who moved to Farmington because of our schools, like myself, and I'd like to see that continue. Our property values depend on it, and I feel that FHS supports our good reputation because of our teachers and our students and our administration, and despite the building. I think everybody here works really hard for our kids, and I value that. And I know we all have the best intentions here. Many people are saying, yeah, I know, I want to do this. And why didn't it pass last time? So I hope there's also people that are here that don't believe, even though maybe they didn't speak, that maybe they came just to see and listen, took the tour. On that note, I just want to point out a couple things that you may or may not notice on the tour. One is we have a strong music program that was probably mentioned, but if you go in that auditorium, I am helping to host an event this weekend at our high school. We'll have over 200 families here. We open and close in that auditorium, and because I do seating charts, I know there are only 5 complete rows of seats in that auditorium. There are over 40 seats missing. And we bring 600 people in from 15 towns around Connecticut, and that's a lovely first impression. I kind of hate it. I spend the rest of the event, I'm hoping I make up and hide that, because the rest of it, and the rest of the school is not quite as ugly as that. They won't see the issues other than that one. The other thing is our very strong STEM. I mentioned I'm in the outreach. We have done so much in all our schools. We put maker spaces in, and we've invested in STEM teachers that are focused on bringing those programs in. Yet we have this incredible robotics team that works out of the annex, and I'm happy they have a space, but they're not really tied to the school. There's over 50 kids that are on that team. They have so many of them going to STEM careers. There are many things that they do that have nothing to do with robots that I don't think people even realize. They make business plans, they fundraise, they do outreach. They're running this event this weekend. It is for kids in 1st through 6th grade, or 7th grade. So they're giving back to younger students, getting them interested. They develop apps and they do graphic design. There is so much for students in this high school to do if they want to join the team, but it's not really all that easy because it's not even here in the high school. So just another, like, you didn't see that because that wasn't on the tour because it's not even here, but it's a really important part of our town. I'd like to see that come through. So I hope as you go through this, because I know you have all the best intentions, you do everything you can to communicate. That's been said a few times. The people I know that didn't support it just didn't really understand it. And I wish I had a good suggestion of why or how to fix that, but that is really a big part of it, I do believe. And on the last note, the safety that somebody touched on, and it kills me to hear them say it, but I see it in my kids when they come home. They do drills here for horrible potential things that could happen, and they don't come home with a very good feeling of it did any good. I've had discussions with my children on what they should do between us, because what can you really do here? If you walked around, do you really believe that the plans the teachers are putting in place are enough? It's hard, and I know you're doing the best you can, but so community-wise, understand that this school it's housing our kids. Give it the investment it needs, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had nothing to do, I had absolutely nothing to do with this, but someone's been inspired to speak, and I don't think she needs to give her home address. Okay, but I'll try to move it down a little bit. Down just a little.
Pull the top, Meredith.
Okay, can I take it out?
Yeah, take it. There you go.
I'm Meredith Trimble and I'm 8, but I want a new high school too. I think that not only for my, but all kids' future, it should be phenomenal. But I go to Union School and I'm surprised that Union School is so great, but the high school is nearly as good. Yes, I'm 8, but I feel that this high school needs improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erin Ross Moses. I live at 33 High Street. I want to echo some of my other community members who have just sort of lauded our schools, because to me, after I've been in the building a few times, but after taking the tour today, again, I'm amazed by the outcomes that we have at Farmington High School, and it's all due to the teachers and the faculty, and just hearing how the maintenance team has to create from nothing parts for an elevator that is no longer able to be serviced by any outside companies. So they're making parts so that some student can get from her floor, from the first floor, his first floor, to an art classroom. That sort of dedication, I'm not sure what sort of code they're meeting, but that sort of dedication that is, speaks to why so many of us have chosen Farmington as the place to raise our families. My husband and I are originally from Buffalo, New York. We moved to Connecticut 8 years ago, in Simsbury, actually, and then chose, after 3 years living in Simsbury, to move to Farmington, and have been nothing but pleased that we made that choice. I know that Simsbury talks about how great their schools are. We have had such a better experience, genuinely, in the Farmington public schools than we had in Simsbury public schools. When my friends who are from Simsbury and still live there talk about, oh, it's too bad that you guys have that school thing that's going on, or it's too, they sort of brag a little bit about their schools. And I know that our elementary schools and our upper elementary schools, and I've heard such fabulous things about IAR. It is really too bad that we have this sort of eyesore that has to happen. I don't mean eyesore in a, that has to be right now for our community. When we think about all of the reasons that our credentials are sort of up in the air. This is an emergency shelter. There is no way that this facility, in case of natural or any other sort of disaster, could help our community. That is terrifying. We are lucky that we live where we live, that we don't have to deal with the natural disasters that other parts of the world, but that is changing, perhaps. We need to make sure that we're not just crossing our fingers and hoping on a prayer that we don't need this facility to utilize for the case of disasters. The significant security issues are a huge concern and should be for not just parents, but for anyone who has a spouse that works in this facility, for anyone who has a spouse that comes in. The security concerns that are in this high school are really terrifying. the heating and ventilation issues. We haven't talked about the amount of money that we're losing because of the inadequacies that are heating and ventilation and cooling and lights. The amount of money that we're wasting every year on inadequate facilities is daunting. The cost to the community, I mean, we all know about the inadequate cafeteria. To start lunch at 9:50, not really 10 o'clock. They're in the room at 9:50, but they can't serve food until 10 o'clock. So that means that a child has a less time during that period to eat lunch, if I'm correct. And then, as someone else pointed out, they have to wait until after sports to get home to have something else to eat. That's not optimal for learning as well. Missing the beginning of your class, we know that is not optimal for learning. There's so many inadequacies. Band-Aid solutions are just going to cost us more as a community. They're going to cost us more because people are going to choose to not come to buy houses in Farmington. They're going to choose to live in Avon. They're going to choose to live in West Hartford or Simsbury. And that would be a shame because they'd be missing out on, I think, the better community. And I know you all probably believe the same as well. To not be ADA compliant in so many ways is not just a horrible aspect. It's also financially terrifying because all it takes is one lawsuit, and it could cost the district an immense amount of money. And there are any number of reasons that somebody could bring a lawsuit. The real cost to either do nothing or to create Band-Aid solutions for this is actually going to cost our community more down the road. We need to think about a long-term comprehensive solution, and both board and town council need to fund a campaign to inform the community. It cannot be placed on private citizens in a private PAC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Brian Linderoth, 4 Chelsea Place in Farmington. My wife and I have lived here for, I think, 24 out of the last 27 years. To say that we've been listening, what did they say, preaching to the converted, it sounds like, most of the people who have spoken tonight are for the school, and that's great. I am too. I'm 66 years old. I went to school with 4,000 people, 1,000 people in my class, not in high school. I think that my 30 years with United Technologies, I spent a lot of time, actually almost every year for 30 years, selling a financial plan, convincing a lot of people that did not want to be convinced that the plan that I was proposing or advocating was necessary. And I think that, when I went to high school, the president of the high school was here. I didn't realize I was taking, what do you call them? Group showers or grunge showers or gang showers. I didn't realize that's what we were doing and that you don't do that anymore. This high school is great. 2 of my 3 kids went here. My third was lucky enough to go to Miss Porter's. But I think that what we all need to realize is that we have to approach a community that voted 2-1 against the last plan. And we've got to fight against that. Okay, we have to put together a platform that convinces them that they were wrong. We've got to put together a scenario that embraces, and this is one of the commentaries I made in a previous statement to this group. We have a community of schools here, not just one high school. One of the things that I was very concerned about with the referendum was how much that $180 million was going to jeopardize the other requirements of the schools in the district. I think when we put together a plan to go back to the community, it needs to be comprehensive in terms of the scope, not just of this high school. We have a lot of schools, elementary schools, middle schools. All of those need to be funded with tax dollars. All of them have requirements. We have to go to the community and say, we must do this. We must have access in our classrooms here, not only in this school, but all our schools for the disabled. We have to have appropriate facilities. Learning does not take place the way it did in the dinosaur age when I went to school. Kids learn differently. I don't think we had cell phones, let alone computers. Learning takes place differently. Kids need different kind of support. I think that we need to reach out to those people and understand that, as the other gentleman here said earlier, I don't think a lot of opponents of the school are here tonight. Most of us who are here are for the school. We have to reach out to those other people and reach them and convince them to change their vote. But we have to give them a reason to do that. We can't just go to them with another plan, because for those of you who saw Hamilton or were lucky enough to hear the soundtrack, you don't have the votes. That's a very common line in the play. So again, I just want, for those of you who do become responsible for this, understand you've got 1/3 of the community fully behind you already. Just don't count on that 1/3 to push this over. You've got to get the other 2/3. And you got to have a plan to do that. You have to be comfortable that you can do that. And you have to have a real strategy behind it, which involves communication, financial planning, and just a lot of enthusiasm around the plan. So that's all I have to say. Good luck.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Schoening, 12 West District Road, Unionville. So I used to work on the custodial staff here. And back in 2011, we had a power outage, and this turned into a shelter. And I got to see how rough this building is. We were cutting off the generator on 3rd shift to make sure we had enough oil in it. We had people on oxygen tanks. Things like that just are not tolerable, I think, for a shelter. There's multiple things with this building that need to be addressed, from the sewage to the HVAC. And with a new building, we'll also find ways to save money from just going to a white roof instead of a black one. That's really all I had to say.
Thank you.
I think I might be the last one. I think maybe no, you're gonna maybe one, maybe second to the last. Sorry, everybody. My name is Tim Labouthier. I am a lifelong resident of Unionville, and I know a lot of folks here, and I want to say I'm here. I live at 77 Sylvan Avenue in Unionville. I'm here representing my family and a lot of folks in the Unionville community that are very supportive of what you're doing. And I want to start out by thanking everybody here. I want to thank the town council and the town manager and the Board of Education and everyone who has worked so hard over all these years to want something better for our students, and we're going to get there. There's no doubt in my mind. I want to thank the people as well that are here who voiced some great ideas and wonderful opinions, and I think democracy is an amazing thing, and we saw it tonight, and we're on our way. Farmington High School is an amazing place, and it's a place that's dear to my own family. My parents were sweethearts here in 1950s, and they are celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. They met here, and they fell in love here, and they're still around. And so this building is very important. So I think at least part of it should be saved. But anyway, what I really want to say is I believe in Farmington, and I believe in Unionville, and I believe in the people here. And it's obvious from everything we've heard that we're going to do something, and we're going to make something better for the future students of Farmington High School. There's no doubt in my mind. Farmington has always stepped up when we needed it to, and that's why I'm very confident. We're reminded by that every Memorial Day when we celebrate those who served from our town in the military and in our conflicts in the United States. And we're reminded when we think about the flood of 1955 and the sacrifices that the people of this town have made. And we came together and we made it a better place. And I think that over the years, we've created a community. We've created all kinds of amazing things here. We have saved an amazing amount of land for our future. My own involvement in the Unionville Village Improvement Association, we started wanting to save Suburban Park in Unionville, and we did that. And I think over the years, through our strength and through our business prowess and through our economic development, we have created a community where businesses thrive, and we have wonderfully low taxes and an amazing amount of resources. So we have a lot to be proud of in this town. And I think in the end, a new high school, something that we need, which is obvious after hearing folks tonight, is in our future. I had an opportunity to tour this building tonight, and it's something I've never done. And I have to admit, we need to do some serious thought about the future and what we want for the students. And I think that we're on our way. But I want to just end by saying that I believe we're going to create something wonderful. I believe it should be not only something that is going to meet the educational needs of our students in the future, but it should also be a place where our community comes together. And I think what we just heard, I remember the Hurricane Sandy. Many of us stepped up. When we talk about stepping up and becoming together as a community, we did that, and many of us were here helping those. I know myself, I had no power for 11 days. We all remember that storm. And we came together, and this building served as a place where we came together and that we took care of each other. And so I know when we look into a new plan for a new high school, I urge you to remember to think about it as it's for students, yes, but it's for our community. And so when we think about the needs of our seniors in the future, this could be a place that could serve them as well. When we think about unfortunately, the types of disasters that may be ahead of us, this is a place where we might come when we need to be together. And so let's build something that keeps those things in mind. There are all kinds of uses for facilities like this, and I'm confident that all of us will come together in the end, and we will create a plan, and we will support it, and we will build it. And it will be a great place where we'll all come together. So thank you for your work. We have a lot ahead of us, but myself, I'm confident we can do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Alex Mizidowski, 188 Southridge Road. With all my respect to all of you, let me be blunt, as usual. First of all, it's a shame to have such a disastrous high school building, right? And first of all, I don't understand why it takes so long. For me, it's a Groundhog Day process. Like it's again. We had this conversation many years ago, and it takes for a really long time for me, right? And I'm really unhappy how this process takes, like because it's taking too much time. And honestly, if I run my own company like you run this process, I will be bankrupt. Like I'll be out of business. What you're missing here is a marketing campaign to support rebuilding high school, right? Because many people who support education in this town actually voted against high school. I have like so many friends who are really pro-education like myself who actually voted no, right? And you guys failed. You basically did not deliver the message. And you did not show how important it is. You did not show like in terms of like costs and money, and you did not address all negativity that went through this, right? What else is missing here in your process, in my opinion, is engaging people, because you are not engaging people, right? Because for me, all this public comment, it's like talking to the wall. I talked to many of you, and we discussed this many, many times. because I would rather prefer like Q&A sessions, and it's missing, and you're not open to have actual discussion. You call me, like many of you actually, called me not to post any comments on social media against or pro or whatever, and because you cannot comment, which I think it's ridiculous. You need to engage people via social media. I know many people here on Facebook, many people, and you need to address it, right? I did not see any benefits analysis after all this meeting that you actually had. I'm talking about the building committee, whatever it's called, right? I'd never seen any actual numbers in easy to read format that people who can open it like 5-6 bullet points and says like, it's a reason why we need to rebuild high school. I didn't see any action plan. Do you guys have any deadlines, any deliverables? I did not see it. And let me be blunt, with all my respect to the teachers, school administration, Farmington school system is not good because of the teachers and school administration, but because of people in community who lives here, because people who come here to Farmington who care about education, right? And if we have such disastrous high school building, and it's actually, people know about this. People know how many leaks you have that have safety issue, ADA issue, whatever issues is. People stop coming to Farmington because of this particular situation. And I hope I will see the referendum about new high school really, really soon, within months, hopefully. But again, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Rosenfield, 2 Candlewood Lane. I walked in late. I've been watching the live stream for about an hour and thought, well, I think I'm going to come over and just say that I have 4 children. My oldest 3 have all graduated from Farmington High School. I have a 4th grader who I hope will be in a better facility that my other 3 went through. Their facility was poor. Their education was excellent, even given the surroundings. And I think that I have a really strong belief that this town will come together, and I think that this community will support a better high school plan. I think it's almost at the point, though, that it's not going to be, will we have a plan? It's which plan will we have to choose? And I'm hoping the plan that we have to choose will one that will support our kids and give them an excellent facility to be in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Emily Collini from 30 High Street. So I have spoken multiple times before, lots of you guys. So many of you already know where I stand. And if you don't, I could tell you I have an 8 and a 6 and a 5-year-old. And then you could probably guess some of my thoughts. And many people before me have already expressed a lot of my opinions. But because I've become a bit of a meetings junkie, I've already seen and looked at the results from both the survey committee and the Facility and Finance Committee, and I wanted to thank both of those committees for the work, because I think there's a little bit of perception that nothing's been done, and that's not true. I know that there's been a lot of work and lots of meetings, and I think that the results from both of those committees that we're going to hear more about tonight are really valuable, and I hope that everybody who came and made public comment, who is able to stay, if not, we're still live streaming, so you can watch at home. But I really want people to stay and hear those presentations. The survey committee shows that, you might know where I stand, and I don't stand alone, that there's many people in the town who support the same ideas I have for the high school, who have the same thoughts and feelings. And I think we need to utilize that survey we have to get those results out there to people. We need to analyze them. We need to keep them in mind as you move forward. And the same thing with the Facility and Finance Committee. Those results are so important too, and some of their recommendations are great, and they really worked hard thinking that through. People who spent a lot of time over the summer working on those types of things. So I would encourage you to use those results to shape the process, and also to take a really good, honest look in the mirror at what happened last time, all of us. I think we need to understand what could have been done better, which a lot of people are talking about tonight. I know that if my first grader can say mistakes make us great, that we can all, adopt that attitude. We don't have to be embarrassed that the proposal last time didn't work. It's not something we need to be ashamed of. It's something we can grow from. And if we teach our kids that, then, we can have that attitude as well. So the community said they read newsletters. Let's send some newsletters. Start right now. That's how they said they get their information. All right, let's do it. That's an easy thing to start with. So I think, we need to be creative problem solvers. We need to stay focused on the big goal. We can't lose accreditation. That can't happen here. So it's serious. There's lots of areas that need a lot of work, and they're not going to fix themselves. And so here we are. We're the grown-ups. We can fix it. I also think a big piece that was missing last time, and the more conversations I have with people as the referendum kind of fades into the distance, is the idea of the cost of doing nothing. And it's been referenced a little bit, but I think that is going to be a crucial piece of information, because it isn't free to leave this building in the state of disrepair that it's in. That is costing money all the time. And, I'll go to those long Board of Ed budget meetings, and you hear them hashing it out on a Saturday. And then, like, the very day the school floods, and it's like, oh, we're going to have to fix that right away. So there is a cost, of doing nothing and leaving these buildings in the shape they're in. And it's not responsible, and we can do better. So thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Okay. I would like to really thank everybody. I'm sorry you can't hear me louder, but thank everyone on behalf of the board and the council for coming tonight. We still have a lot of information here that we're going to give you tonight, and there'll be many, many, many other meetings to talk about the high school and the schools. So please keep coming and listening. We have everything on our websites, the schools and the towns. So please keep up with it through their websites as well. Now I would like to turn it over to...
Excuse me, Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may address the audience also, I'd just like to thank everybody on behalf of the Board of Education for coming out tonight. I won't rehash all the comments. I think everybody summarized pretty much our thoughts and intentions in going forward with the project last time. And I just want to thank Kathy, the administrators, my entire board, the town council, previous council members, Johnny, and the entire building committee for all their efforts in the first project. I think, Emily, we ended on a good note we had a lessons learned, and that's what this is. I mean, this is a process. It's going to hopefully inform the community, inform us. What were our takeaways? What could we do better? And we're going to come back with a new process. I mean, just because it failed does not mean that the project doesn't need to be done, but we will figure out a solution to the problem and, to tease that into the next part of the program. And hopefully some of these efforts are starting. The ad hoc committee, financial ad hoc, the survey committee was to get our finger on the pulse of the community. And I think we're going to learn a lot, and I hope everybody stays and sees the beginning of the fruits of our labor going at this again, because the need for the school, not only from an educational but from a community perspective, still exists. And we're going to find a solution to the problem. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. So now our consideration of special topics. First, we're going to hear about the survey ad hoc committee's findings and recommendations. Beth Kittner.
Good evening. My name is Beth Kittner. I'm a member of the Town Council, and I chaired the FHS High School Community Survey Ad Hoc. I want to say good evening and thank you to everyone who came out, to my fellow Town Council members, Board of Education members, and certainly members of the public. We're having great attendance tonight at the tour and for the meeting, so that's a great start. I want to thank the survey ad hoc committee members who served, CJ Thomas from our town council, from Board of Education. We had Chris Fagin, our board chair, Bill Becker, Ellen Sayuda. We had 2 town residents serve with us, Maura McGinnis and Camille Simpson. And we had non-voting members, Kathy Greeter, our superintendent of schools, Bill Silva, our high school principal, Matt Ross, our technology director for Farmington Public Schools, and Nancy Nickerson, our town chair, served as ex-officio member. And our town hall staff that did so much to support us and help us along with our work, Erica Robertson, our assistant town manager, and Kat Krajewski. The ad hoc committee met throughout the summer months. It's really difficult to set meetings during the summer, but we came together and did a lot of work through early winter. We had great participation. We worked hard together with our survey consultant, who you'll meet in a little while, to craft a survey that we felt good about putting out to the community. I want to thank all the town residents who participated in the survey as well. So tonight I'm going to give a brief introduction to the survey process and what that looked like, and then I'll introduce our survey consultant, who will give a presentation of the survey creation and the results. And then I'll follow with the ad hoc committee's findings and recommendations, and we'll do some questions and answers as well. You should all have this summary document that I'm going to refer you to, because my presentation is pulled from this document that the ad hoc committee developed. It says summary, and it's dated November 27th, 2018. So you can refer to that. So our ad hoc committee was established by the town council in May of 2018. And we were charged with hiring a consultant to facilitate a citizen survey focused on the high school facility, and to report the results of the survey to the town council and the Board of Education, which is what we're doing tonight. The ad hoc committee began meeting in June. We developed an RFP, we reviewed the responses, and in August, the Center for Research and Public Policy was selected from 5 firms that responded to our RFP. So over the course of several meetings, the committee provided input for formulating survey questions and had a lot of discussion with the consultant, and we sought feedback from the Facility and Financial Ad Hoc Committee as well. So when all was said and done, we probably had about 4 to 5 iterations of the survey instrument. Then the survey went back to CRPP so they could ensure a fair, objective, and balanced survey to go out to the community. They did things like balanced, scaled answers, finalizing the wording and the placement of questions and that sort of thing. Our committee thought it was really important early on to approach the survey with a priority on looking forward and not dwelling on the negativity and some of the things that happened with the 2017 referendum. But there were some questions included that help us analyze what happened in 2017 as well, so we can take a look at that. And the survey was ultimately conducted among Farmington residents in October of last year. So now I'd like to introduce our survey consultant, Jerry Lindsley from the Center for Research and Public Policy. Jerry is a president and founder of CRPP, which was established in 1979. He has his master's degree from Fairfield University. He lives in and works out of New Hampshire. He teaches college courses in business management, research, marketing, polling, and public policy. And he's a certified ski instructor, a junior ski race team coach, and a volunteer EMT. I want to just take the opportunity to thank Jerry for all his work and travel and his expertise, which was crucial to our work.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I apologize to so many faces that have already heard these results, so it'll be a little bit repetitive, but I'm sure each time we go through these, we learn a little bit more. So happy to take you through the task for me tonight is to take you through the survey, the results, and then perhaps have time to answer any questions that you might have. So I was first asked to just give you 60 seconds on who we are, the Center for Research and Public Policy. So I just want to spend just a moment on that and let you know that we work in probably 6 or even more sometimes disciplines: market research, social research, public policy research. We also do public opinion, political, but not for candidates,
usually for our college and university clients that do polling, direct democracy research, such as the Statehood Movement for Puerto Rico, and organizations like that. We are a Connecticut corporation. We have offices, and I work out of New Hampshire, but we have offices in Arizona and Vermont as well. As Beth said, we've been around since 1979. Clients include the Centers for Disease Control, where we do the behavioral risk factor surveillance survey in many states. I mentioned the Statehood Movement in Puerto Rico. Just last week, we were in Connecticut presenting results to a community survey for Wilton, recently finished in Southbury, fairly recently in Groton, Connecticut. So we have a lot of experience within Connecticut, but we've worked with about 300 municipalities and counties around the country too. Corporate clients include groups like Bunge, Johns Hopkins, All Children's Hospital down in Florida, a lot of state agencies, utilities, and as I said, colleges and universities too. So sometimes our research supports strategic plans, satisfaction indexes, community needs assessments, for example, feasibility studies, or other types of studies. I won't spend much time on this, but this is just a sample of the municipalities and counties that we worked with around the country. And the organization, there are a lot of folks that were involved in this project on your behalf too, that were behind the scenes, from data analysis and the supervision of the phone calls that are made and such too. But that's us. So let's turn our attention to the survey and walk you through first just an introduction. Some of you were closer to this process than others, so I do want to spend just a moment on a reintroduction or an introduction to what it is that we did on your behalf, and then also a little bit on the methodology so that you do know how we went about the task of completing these 400 interviews among residents here in Farmington too. So let's get started. Tonight, of course, we're going to report on the results to the survey about citizen attitudes towards and willingness to finance high school renovation in Farmington. The areas for investigation. So questions were built around each one of these areas. Quality of life. So we have some input on quality of life from residents. Current standard of living. These are great observations to make in a survey so you can do some cross-tabulations on comparisons to their answers to other questions within the survey instrument. A very short section on rating town services, rating the public schools. I think you heard from some of the community members that have already seen the results. Those are really high and impressive ratings. Interest in and perceived importance of the Farmington High School upgrades and updates, perceptions of the importance. Awareness levels for the statement of need, things that are needed here at the high school, overall support or opposition to modifying Farmington High School, support and opposition to new construction, renovation at varied cost levels, tax implication levels, sources for information, where people generally go to get their information about Farmington in general, Farmington schools, the system. Views, we didn't belabor the point. We didn't spend a lot of time, as Beth said, on the 2017 results, but we did ask questions. If they, regardless of whether they voted, whether they supported it or did not, and the reasons why. So those are fascinating to us to see the reasons why people supported it or opposed that 2017 referendum. Understanding of the 2017 Associated High School new construction renovation costs, and then some demographics. We collect demographics so that we can make some observations about the results by these different subgroups, whether it's age or gender or income and such too. So that's the overview, the methodology. You can do surveys many different ways. They can be done in person like the census is done. You can do it by phone. You could do it online. You could do it by paper. As a group, it was decided to do a random sample of 400 surveys among Farmington residents, and that's indeed what we did. We did spend a number of meetings going back and forth on the survey instrument, and we did work on the survey design together. A deliberative process. Our job, our obligation to the community is to make sure that what we do is fair, it's objective, and it's independent, and it can't be criticized for having things like unbalanced scales or interpretations that are not accurate. So sometimes we went back and forth on wording just to make sure that things were fair, evenly placed, and evenly balanced. So our staff, with years of survey experience and survey design, we worked hard to edit out any bias that might be held within the survey instrument. Everything that was done in-house, except we don't do sample. We don't pull sample. There are 3 large firms around the country that are the largest providers of sample. Sample being the phone numbers that we call that are randomly selected. So everything else from programming to fielding to coding to editing to verification, validation, logic checks, computer analysis, and report writing was done in-house. Some of you may have gotten these calls, but they were made between October 17th through the 25th, between 5 and 9 p.m. generally, and then callbacks, as well as some original calls were made 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the weekends. And some people are not home 5 to 9 p.m., so we always include some weekend calling too. And to qualify, you had to be a resident of Farmington. It didn't work if you were a resident of another town, and you were 18 years of age or older. So all population-based surveys that we conduct, especially by phone, are approximately proportional to population contribution. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but when we pull sample, we pull it by either census group block or tract or block level. So, for example, if census group block X9704 in Farmington holds 5% of the population, about 5% of the phone numbers that we give to our phone bank is from that census group block. So that we can't have one area of town overrepresented or underrepresented by the way in which we pull sample. We use a super random digit sampling procedure that allows us lots of homes. I think it's in Connecticut has one of the highest numbers of landlines that are unlisted. I think it's 74%. So we get around that by, and Farmington would be pretty high because it's fairly affluent too. We get around that and we do call. There are people who wonder how the heck we got their phone number, but the computers know the area code, we know the prefix, and then the computers generate the last 4 digits. And that allows us to get through to unlisted households after we purge out any business phone numbers that were given to us within that sampling frame, because we're not calling businesses in this instance. We did do mixed access because, as you know, lots of folks do not have landlines anymore. So we included cell phones within the sampling frame as well. So those of you that do remember your statistics classes, whether here at Farmington High or in college, 400 sample represents roughly plus or minus 5% at a 95% confidence level. So the way I explain it to students is if we repeated the survey another 100 times, 95 out of those 100 times, we would be coming back to you with results that are within plus or minus 5% of the results that you're about to see tonight. So that, folks, and there's always a margin for error. So we're always roughly within that plus or minus 5%, and that's what that last paragraph is referring to. So that's the methodology, and we'll launch now into a summary of the findings. And are we going to have questions afterwards? Is that the plan? After Beth's done? Okay. So quality of life, always a great statistic to have to make some observations and crosstabs, but it's also a good icebreaker for people just to generally get them talking about their life here in Farmington too. So quality of life, 99.3% reported a positive quality of life here in Farmington. In perspective and in relationship to other communities that we work in, you can have urban surveys that are done that are in the 40s. You can have some other suburban area communities perhaps, or suburban city-ish that are in the 60s. But you can't get much better than 99.3%. And what I pointed out to the committee before is that that's a reverse bell curve too. So most research would see the very good as 26.5, and then the good would be 72.8. So there's an intensity there that researchers see here on quality of life. Really, residents are pretty happy here. You have 0.08 with a poor quality of life. Standard of living is also helpful for us to understand too, to see, to make some crosstabs based on standard of living. But here too, you had 90% with either an improved quality of living over the past 2 years or no movement, but considered to be still good at 68%. So pretty impressive standard of living. Ratings of town services. Using a 10-point scale, the positive rating is considered to be 7 through 10. And for town services, we were at 88%. And for the Farmington Public Schools at 82.1%. So very the small numbers for poor ratings. There were some neutrals, but very low ratings for low numbers for poor ratings. So moving a little bit closer to the purpose of the survey, on a fresh start, there exists a strong interest in a renewed planning process for a new or renovated Farmington High School. 81.6% suggested that they were either very interested at 53.8% or somewhat interested at 27.8%. So interest is strong in the community. The importance attributed to the needs for the changes was also strong. We had 49.5% suggest the needed changes were very important. You had 34% report somewhat important, 5% somewhat unimportant, or 8.8% not at all important, for 13.8% of those that we surveyed suggested that the need for changes was not all that important. Very few open-ended opportunities within the survey, but one of them was where we had respondents were asked to report the changes that they would like to see considered in a new or renovated high school. So the most frequent mention was a new roof. 22.3% mentioned a new roof in that open-ended format opportunity. The second was a facility that is safe and secure. That was the second highest mention in that open-ended format. These are top of mind, things that come to the mind of the respondent when they were asked the question. Temperature control. I watched that video too, so some of these things come up in the video. Code compliance. A facility that is better designed to educate, 14.5. ADA, handicap accessibility, 14.2. Update the 1928 building, 14.2. And I won't read all of these, but you can see it goes on to the next slide. A warm, more comfortable building for visitors, students, faculty, staff, 10.8. The gymnasium, ADA again compliant, 9%. High school facility can be used as a community shelter, 8.5. Improved and ADA accessible athletic fields, 8.5. Won't read the rest. Demolish the building, better parking, reduce the sprawl, adding a second floor, tennis courts, and about 22% also mentioned some other things too. And at the end, if you'd like, I can go through and read some of those other comments that were probably with fewer mentions than that 3.8%. So on a number of issues, we asked about awareness. Respondents were asked how aware they were of several issues cited in a statement of need, which need addressing in the existing high school. Approximately 2/3 of all residents surveyed were aware of most of the needs listed. 68% were either somewhat or very aware of the need for safety, school safety and security upgrades. Roof repairs are required. 67% reported they were somewhat or very aware. Increased space for auditorium, library, cafeteria, and classrooms to accommodate students and educational needs. 67.3% were aware. 66.8% aware of the need to meet and maintain high school accreditation requirements. Improvements to address environmental issues such as temperature, water, air, noise, and light, 66%. 64.5% aware of the need for increased space and classroom need for educational programming. Code compliance at 63.7%. Sprawl of the building as a need, a remedy, 63.7%. Meeting ADA handicap accessibility requirements, 62.7%, and 59.5% were aware of parking lot improvement needs to help with traffic flow and the number of spaces. So on going forward, in any renewed effort to upgrade the Farmington High School, there was agreement, 88.8%, either strongly or somewhat agreed, that public communication of a new design should distinguish between required and desired upgrades. 84% agreed, either strongly or somewhat, that I could be convinced to support new construction or renovation if I clearly understood the need. 82.8% agreed, strongly or somewhat, an updated and upgraded high school facility is important to maintaining home property values. 48.3% agreed if space could be identified for purchase, I would support a new high school in a different location. So moving to support and opposition. In an early survey support or opposition question, one of the first that we really got into support or opposition, researchers asked respondents which of 3 different options they were currently most interested in seeing pursued by the planners. Cost or tax implications were not included yet in this question. We had 32.8% were in support of a newly constructed high school where about 85% is new and where all required or most of the desired upgrades are considered. 41% were inclined to support a renovated high school where all required and some of the desired upgrades are accomplished. And 15.5% a renovated high school where the minimum required upgrades are accomplished. We had a few, 4.3%, that said none of these options, and 6.3% were really unsure or didn't know. Then researchers read the following paragraph. The committee tasked with looking at future upgrades and updates of the Farmington High School facility will be exploring new construction or renovation that will range in overall cost from $75 million to $135 million. Following that introduction, respondents were asked to report their support or opposition to high school construction or renovation at 4 different cost and personal tax implication levels. We started at $135 million. Respondents were asked to indicate their support or opposition in a new referendum if the investment in a new high school construction or renovation is $135 million, meaning an average increase of $511 in taxes per year over 20 years for the average Farmington resident. So assessment. So we had 51% said that they would either definitely or probably support a measure at that level. Then we asked those that would not support it, that said they would probably oppose it or definitely oppose it. I should explain, I'm sorry, I'm skipping here. I should explain to the right of that, we also, towards the very end, we asked people if they were likely to vote in a new referendum. So when you see these tables, you see respondents, which are the 400 initially here, and then to the right of that, likely voters. So you can see that 54.8% of those that said they would likely come out and vote in a new referendum were a little bit higher than the 51% that said they would definitely support or probably support at $135 million. But now you see those that said probably oppose or definitely oppose. Those folks were asked, okay, if you won't support at 135, would you be willing to do it at $125 million with a tax implication for the average household at $435 per year over 20 years And we picked up 1% for definitely support and 2.5% for probably support on the respondent side, and that moved our number to 54.5% support at $125 million. On the likely voter side of the equation, it's 58.1% support. We tested then at $100 million. And the same type of question, but the ramifications, the implication is $348 in taxes per year over 20 years for the average Farmington residential assessment. We picked up 1.3 for definitely support, and we picked up 6.5 for probably support, and we moved the total that would support renovation at $100 million at 62.3% among respondents, and then among just those likely voters that said they were likely to come out at 66.7%. Finally, at $75 million, we asked folks if they would support it with a ramification of $261 in taxes over 20 years. And we picked up 2.5% definitely. And we picked up 9.5 probably, for a total of 74.3% that would support a referendum at $75 million with a tax implication of $261. So the follow-up here was another open-ended question to get you to definitely support. What would it take? And that was really the question. In an open-ended format question, researchers asked respondents to identify 3 or 4 things they would need to see or hear or better understand before they would feel comfortable saying they could definitely support either new construction or renovation of the high school. And these are the responses in declining order. Know more about the cost of the budget, 24.9%. That's what they would need to hear or see or understand in order to say they would definitely support it. 17.5% said no detailed plan with ongoing updates on the proposal and process. 14% wanted that required or desired needs to be justified and proved to them. Still would not agree. I'm against it, 6.3%. Only minimal needs to be met in plan, 5.3%. No opinion. Town to seek unbiased, fair bids, be transparent in the process. They want to know that's happening, 4.6%. Need more information overall, 3.9%. 2.8% said minimal impact on student life. They want to know that student life can go on here, education can go on here, and they would be more inclined to support it. It goes on to the next page, things that they would like to know or hear or see or understand, that there would be no new building construction, know how long it would take, has nothing to do with me, 0.7%. These are all pretty minimal mentions. So on communication was the next section of the survey instrument. We wanted to know where people get their information, just so that those that do the planning and communication about this know how to reach people. So 31.5% said that it's family, friends, neighbors, coworkers that they go to or seek out information about the Farmington school system and the town, followed by 29% that talked about printed local newspapers, 23% newsletters, 17% internet websites, 14% the Farmington Town website, 13.5% the Farmington School website, flyers, brochures, followed by local newspapers, online, emails, direct mail, social media at 9.5, talk of Farmington, 9.5, directly from the schools at 8.5, other mentions, Farmington Public Schools app, 4.8, TV, 3.8. I won't read the rest, but there's Everbridge, there's employers, radio, blogs, front porch. Other responses below that 0.5 included Board of Education meetings, Farmington Patch, meetings, meeting minutes, and such. Social media used, pretty heavy. Facebook at 55.5%. 35% don't use social media. I don't believe that. Instagram, 18.3%. Twitter, 12.3%. YouTube, 8.5%. Snapchat, LinkedIn, that's mostly business, 7.0%. So it just gives folks an idea of where people go. We moved then towards the end of the survey, we were moving to the 2017 referendum. Regardless of whether the respondent voted in the 2017 high school referendum or not, researchers asked if they supported or opposed the 2017 new construction renovation plan. So this is among folks that we don't know if they voted or not. 34% said they strongly supported it. 10% said they somewhat supported it, 44.3%. Somewhat opposed, 7.5%. Strongly opposed, 34.8%, 42.3% total. Had no opinion, no interest, 6.5%. Unsure, don't know, 7.0%. So we asked that question. I'm sorry, I forgot to load that slide. We asked that question to ask this question. So the follow-up to that is the reasons supporters were asked what the reasons were for supporting the 2017 referendum. The largest and most frequent mention among those that supported the referendum: for the kids, investment in the kids, my kids go there. 12.1%, the current building conditions are poor, need repairs, bad shape. Quality education is important. Education is a top priority, 9.0. Need to maintain home and property values. Need a new building, not renovation. Needs renovation, updates, upgrades, modernization, 5.7. It's currently dangerous, safety reasons, 5.1. 4.5 said high school reputation does not keep up with the towns. It was a good plan, well thought out, would benefit the town, not at code, needs to be attractive to new residents, not convinced on price, need a pool, 0.6. Reasons for opposition. So the group of folks that you saw that were opposed to the referendum, the price was overblown, 52%. And look at the size of that number, 52%, compared to the reasons for support and how more evenly they were distributed. So price here, price was overblown, costly, taxes will increase, excessive expense. Not enough information, not convinced, lack communication, handled poorly, 8%. No need, not necessary, fine as it is, 7%. No need, not necessary, don't need, fancy new building, most expensive school in the state and the nation, 7%. Renovate, yes. Build new, no, 5%. Disagree with the plan, changes planned, 4%. 4% also said only offered one plan, no less expensive options offered, no wish list. No trust in the board, lack of honesty, lied, taken by surprise, 4%. 2% said kids would be living in construction. 2% said want new, not renovation. Waste, 1%. Debt incurred, 1%. New library and police station recently in town, same year. I guess other things were going on too. And 1%, the state budget is not trustworthy. A few statements about the referendum. We asked people if they agreed with these. Majorities did. We had 74% strongly or somewhat agree with the following. I clearly understood the proposal for the high school that was presented in the referendum. And this is from folks that may have voted or may not have voted in the referendum. 71% strongly or somewhat agreed. I was confident I knew the cost to me of a new high school in additional property taxes. 67%, I saw the overall cost of the new high school as too high. 59.8%, the communication to the public was adequate. I had enough information to make an informed decision. 54.3% agreed, either strongly or somewhat, that the public input was sought in the planning process. We asked folks if they knew the cost that was proposed in 2017. While 41% did not recall or were unsure of the price tag, the largest group of respondents, 23%, suggested the cost was somewhere between $125 and $150 million. Some, 14%, suggested the total price was $175,000 or more. So a lot of uncertainty. At one point, we were just asked our opinion about what happened and some observations, perhaps about going forward too. So I just want to just take a moment and just summarize. When we go to task, when the data comes in our office, 5 of us get the data and we go our separate ways, and then we write the highlights, which is what we have in our report to you. The consensus of the 5 folks that go our separate ways and look at the data and then come back, then we write the highlights of the things that we want to convey to the town. So these summary statements are things that we all in our office agreed to. You saw in the results, it was about 44%, 42% support and opposed the referendum, regardless of whether they voted back in 2017. But it appears that the town was evenly divided in 2017, despite the referendum loss. Those opposed identified and they turned out their voters. Those opposed prevailed at messages. We saw in the open-ended questions over and over again that this was the most expensive high school in the country. That's what was proposed. So that was the message that was getting out there. Voters did not see, but they wanted options in the run-up to this. Voters did not know the impact on them personally in new taxes. They could guess, but they really weren't sure. Cost recall was limited, as you just saw. Many were unsure. Residents felt a little bit rushed. Going forward, finite, very clear messages to a population that seems to want quality education and facilities in town. Increased awareness of need is going to be necessary. So that, folks, I appreciate your time. I'll turn it back to Beth.
Thanks, Matt. So a lot of information. Many of you in the room are hearing it for the first time, but I'm also aware of our time tonight and that we have another ad hoc committee to go with. But I do want to bring forward kind of what the main highlights the committee members saw in terms of findings from this survey. And then we'll talk about what we brought forward as recommendations based out of that. So I'm going to start with highlighting the results that we felt were most important. One thing of note, we initially looked at this survey in the very early stages as a way for us to get a grasp on the financial aspect of the project and the support in the community around the financial piece. But we were really able to gather data in a lot of other areas that I know are going to be very valuable going forward. So that was, I think that was really notable. So as we heard from Jerry, high quality of life, people are happy with the quality of life here, high satisfaction with town services and with the public schools. I take that as a really good point because I wouldn't think that a municipality would want to go embark on a large capital project when residents are feeling negatively about services or the town or their quality of life. So that was definitely a positive. So the main way people get information in Farmington about our schools and the town, that informal network, friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, around the water cooler at work and walking the dog in the neighborhood and meeting up at the schools and sporting events and volunteer jobs. We really want to keep that in mind as we roll out a communication plan. Local print newspapers was high as well, and that really surprised us. In this day and age of digital technology, we live in a community where we have a community newspaper, the Valley Press. We have the Hartford Courant that I know a lot of people still subscribe to. So people are reading those, and we want to keep that in mind as well. And as someone mentioned, I think one of the members of the community, the Farmington Town newsletter that comes from Town Hall. People are reading what's coming from Town Hall. So we need to keep that in mind and increase those communications and make sure that all of our information gets out that way. So of those who use social media, Facebook was the most popular. That wasn't really surprising to us, but should be a part of the communication plan. When we look at interest level, probably do this. So when we look at interest level, residents expressed significant interest in a renewed planning process for the high school facility. Over 80% were very interested or somewhat interested. And over 4/5 of the respondents perceived the need for changes at FHS as important. For awareness, residents are aware of the needs of the FHS facility as outlined in the Statement of Needs. 2/3 were aware of most of the needs listed in the Statement of Needs. Respondents were most aware of needs for school safety, security, roof repairs, increased space to accommodate students, and educational needs. But what we saw here was that the awareness for all of the needs was fairly high. I think it started at 59% and went up to about 68% for each of those needs. When we look at support, I think this is a key finding and a key message and something to be positive about going forward after our 2017 referendum. There is support for a project. 83% agreed that an updated and upgraded high school facility is important to maintaining their home values, their home property values. We have support for a project, and then we looked at as Jerry explained, the cost and tax impact. We used the survey used figures that went through the town's director of finance, and they were based on a financial model that was used by the facility and financial ad hoc committee. So we had pretty solid numbers when we calculated tax impact and so forth. So we were at about a 50-50 split when the figure of $135 million was used. And that $135 million translated into a $511 average annual tax increase. We get a bit higher support when we look at $125 million, which is $435 for an annual tax increase. And then when we get down to $100 million for a project cost, it moves to just over 60%. Nearly 75% of the respondents supported a project at $75 million, or $261 average annual tax increase. Nearly 3/4 of respondents support a project that accomplishes more than the minimum requirements. That's a really significant number there. And then in the question that asked about support for a renovation project where the minimum required updates are accomplished, there was significantly less increase at about 15%. So all of that taken into account, the committee talked about recommendations going forward. Communication is key. We know that in all aspects of our lives. Focused, clear, and concise communication is necessary to build support of a new project. We now understand how people get their information in Farmington. Friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, the importance of the informal networks. So we need to really rely on the community in some ways to spread the word, but we also need to work on ways that as a town, as elected officials, we can get to those informal networks and get our information across. Encourage more public participation. Just a bit over half of the people surveyed think that public participation was sought in the previous process. We could probably do better. We need to do better. We need to get people inside the Farmington High School facility. That's one of the main reasons why we're here tonight. It's not the greatest venue for this kind of meeting, but we think it's important. The tours are important. The survey did tell us that there's increased support, increased awareness of the needs, and increased understanding of the project proposal when we look at that cross-tabulation of people who have been in the building recently. So that is absolutely key. We want to show the public how the committee arrived at the proposed project, so they want regular updates on the process. Under 60% of the people in the survey said that they had enough information to make an informed decision. So we need to do better with that. 17.5% said they would definitely support a project if they had a detailed plan with ongoing updates on the proposal and the process. So just those incremental updates and clear information on a regular basis out to the community is really important. So we need to, as Jerry mentioned, communicate the required versus desired upgrades. There should be a differentiated outline for required versus desired upgrades in public communication. This could be a challenge, I think, to categorize some of the proposed improvements as one or the other, but the building committee, town officials, and elected officials are really going to need to strive towards that. Communicate facility project cost. This needs to be done more clearly and earlier in the process, perhaps on a different timeline than the previous building committee put theirs out. 41% of surveyed do not recall or know the price of the last project. 52% of those that oppose the project believe the price was overblown, costly, etc. So clearly articulating and justifying the price of the project will be a key factor for our communication. We have to show residents not just the price, but what's included. What are they getting for the cost? What are the benefits for the full community, and not just the students here? So lastly, I just want to emphasize that a new building committee would benefit from using these survey results throughout their process. There's a lot more that we didn't even get into tonight, believe it or not. There's a lot of documentation that can be referred to for decision-making and helping to shape a marketing and communication plan. There's a wealth of data that can be referred to throughout the process and to come up with a plan that takes into account the community's views. Thank you very much, and we can open it up for some discussion and questions. So how are you going to do this if we have... this was going to be within... I'm sorry, we have to keep it between the two committees. To open it up to public comment right now, I don't think is feasible or allowed in our format. But I would encourage, is there a way that someone can email or on the website?
Anyone who has specific questions from tonight can either see myself or Kat at the end of the meeting, and we'll get your answers to you, or you can email us at the town hall. Our information is on the webpage.
So the town manager's office can take questions from the community. Okay. So I'll take any questions from Council, Board of Ed. Yes, Mark.
Hi there. First of all, I'd just like to thank you guys for the amount of time, effort put into the survey committee. One of the biggest things that jumps out to me on the report is the 2017 referendum, when they were asked how many supported versus opposed the referendum.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be it's kind of a 44 to 42 split, which didn't really accurately represent the 2017 results of the split. So I know that's kind of hard to recreate in a survey because you pretty much have to go until you find that number. But I guess maybe this is more of a question to the company that did the survey.
I would think so. That's what I was going to defer to. I know where you're going. I have some ideas, but I think we should leave it to the professionals.
Because obviously that result greatly impacts many of the other questions beforehand about what the community would support as far as 135, 125, 175, because those numbers are based on a split where a majority of the people opposed it in the 2017 referendum. But I guess my question would be, was there any thought put into an adjustment, maybe for, I guess, a range from what the results are of the actual survey up to that margin of disparity in the referendum results?
Yeah, so the survey was, in our view, and that led us to that top summary statement, and that was, it appears that the town was closer in their view and their opinion about the referendum. The survey respondents, the 400, in our view, was a reflective proportional representation. If you had gotten a proportional representation at the polls, That's what would have happened. It would have won by 2%, in our view. What happened by going through and looking at the open-ended responses and such too, does appear that the opposition won on messaging. They were able to turn out their vote and identify their vote. I think what you're suggesting is, should we have weighted this perhaps in some way? And our view is that the 400 sample that we took is reflective of the population, but those that turned out to vote, that wasn't a representation of the town. It was a representation of the ability of two different groups that were able to turn out their vote, and one did a better job than the other did.
Yeah. It's just my only concern is with the survey going out.
Yep.
This does not look like a reflection of what actually happened.
No, and we didn't intend it to be. In fact, a lot of these questions were posed among people that didn't vote at all. We just wanted to, because we knew a lot of folks that didn't vote would be important going forward too. So you would want others to come out and vote that you didn't have before. So again, I think what our objective was to get a proportional, reflective, representative sample of the town. And we're telling you that we don't believe that the turnout, the turnout during the 2017 was reflective and representative, truly. Okay. So,
thank you.
Question, kind of following up on Mark's point, maybe you can clarify this a little bit in terms of the overall context, because I know that was something we discussed in our deliberations, this idea that the referendum number was so different than what the survey indicated. Can you comment on the fact, or the significance of the fact, that this survey was taken essentially 18 months after the referendum, after essentially 2 municipal elections litigated the question of what happened in the referendum in September of 2017 when there was a primary, and then again in November of 2017 where there was an actual municipal election. So through the process of vetting the referendum in our local deliberations as we went to the polls, would that, in fact, can you draw conclusions from that context as to how that would relate to the fact that it does seem to be more of an even split in the community? In other words, does the after referendum developments in our community have an impact on how that referendum, how the survey came out the way it came out?
Yeah, I would believe that the event, the 2017, was big news, and people that didn't vote or regretted not going and voting, and those that were peripherally aware became much more knowledgeable in subsequent events, subsequent conversations, news stories, and such, that they learned a lot in that process post-referendum, even if they didn't vote. So awareness levels probably went up. Inclination to support the effort probably would have gone up because of all the conversations that took place in the news articles and by the reporters and elected and appointed officials throughout the town. The conversation spiked right after, not before, unfortunately for you, but right after the election. So I think it impacted awareness, it impacted knowledge. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes,
but
thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question on the open-ended format questions on page 35. The N was 285. I couldn't follow who the N was on that one. Who were the 185 left out? Who did you ask the question of, the open-ended?
Can you give me just the page number?
It's page 35, I think, on the one I'm looking at. I didn't know who the 185 got. Who were the dropped out group?
285.
Yeah, 285. So wouldn't it be 185 dropped out?
Oh,
115. Or 115. Sorry, 115.
So
I just From the pages before, I obviously can't even subtract 285 from 400, so I certainly can't do percentages.
So I think, I don't have that, unfortunately, I don't have my composite aggregate data in front of me, but there were 285 responses to that open. Not everyone has to answer an open-ended question.
So I just didn't know who was the N. Who did you ask the open-ended question?
The N is the number of people responding.
Right, so what group did you decide to ask that question to? Was it people who said they supported it, didn't support it? I guess it would be, I don't know. But
yeah, I just have to find the question.
I'm not following your question.
Well,
I'm not following your question.
who's the N? Who's the 285? Why isn't it 400?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how they respond.
No, because there were people that said they didn't know. Or is it possibly that 115 people just didn't answer it? I don't know.
Thank you. Hang on just a second. I have to find the question. I have to find the question number because these are not numbered on page 35.
It's probably in the full report. It's
okay, so here we go. Please tell us 3 or 4 things you would need to hear or better understand. Yes, okay, so here we go. So 285 responses to that.
So like some people just didn't answer.
Some people didn't
Okay.
answer that question.
So you asked everyone, but some people just chose not to answer it, or okay.
Yep, and then we even probed, is there anything else? So there
Right, yeah.
potentially could have been more than 400 responses.
Right, so it's not a survey, like if sometimes you get a written survey and then there's like, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? And people leave it blank.
Yep.
So that, okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sure. N's, folks, if you see the word N, it's just the number of responses or respondents.
I don't know. Mark, then Bill, I think, unless yours is a follow-up.
All right, no. I wanted to return to another point that was made in your summary, and I was hoping maybe we can all talk about this a little bit. And I kind of expressed some concern about using this phrase, these turns of phrases in our deliberations. The idea of required versus desired upgrades is something that causes me great concern. And it's not that I don't understand why the question is being asked or why we need to be mindful of those concepts. This isn't really a question for the survey team. It's really a question for us to deliberate. Mm-hmm. And that is, what is this process intended to accomplish? And I think this idea of identifying desires versus requirements, it kind of, before we even get into the process, we're already beginning to frame what we want to see come out of the process with specifics. And I think we are at the point where we need to go back to a building committee to really do the work of identifying what responds to the statement of need. We saw that in our survey data, that effort, that process, if it's well communicated and supported by town leadership, will get a fair hearing in the community. So I think I know I'm probably in the minority on this, but I really feel strongly that this concept of requirements versus desire, it limits what our administrators and working with the building committee can come up with that really responds to developing a 21st century high school. Because frankly, we're not experts in what is required, what is desired. So an ice cream maker might be a desired thing, and we can all agree that's probably frivolous, or on a larger scale, a pool or a hockey arena, right? Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about technology, we heard tonight things like, quantum computing is coming in, I don't understand what putting quantum computers in, but I'm just saying we don't even necessarily know what we need in 10, 15 years, and we need to create an infrastructure that will allow for that kind of flexibility. So it may be perceived at this point as a desire, but it really is something that would be integral 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And I just think it's very self-limiting to use that kind of language, at least at this stage. I'm mindful of the financial restraints and that are in the back of everyone's head as we deliberate this process. But while we're still on the point of let's come up with what can we communicate to the community that there clearly is going to be buy-in for if we do it well. So that's really what I want to kind of put out there is this, where's everybody's thoughts on these desired versus requirements, and then kind of go from there. Because if we can't get through that process, I think we're already limiting ourselves. I mean, we're talking about, and we get to the next half of the presentation tonight, we're going to be talking about ranges that we're going to talk, that are going to be the charge of the building committee. I'm not sure how I understand that mentality, so I'm not going to, and I wasn't involved in those committees' deliberations, so I'm really interested in hearing about that. But I don't want to get into a place where we're already limiting ourselves, because what I don't want to do is misinterpret or overinterpret the results of the referendum as saying the community is 100%, the 2-to-1, here's what I hear. I hear 2-to-1 margin is, you have to respond to that. The survey data, I think, debunks that pretty convincingly. And when we hear comments about the misinformation that led to that kind of an outcome, I'm even more skeptical about the impact of the referendum as we dug into this work and found that a lot of the information that people voted no on was incorrect, they were misinformed for lots of reasons. So that's where I'm at.
So that wasn't a question, but you want to raise...
No, I wanted a comment. No, it was a comment. I didn't feel it was a question. It was a comment.
But yeah, no, I think the language we use, how do we define those? I think that's going forward, a building committee and our communication. And maybe we don't use those terms, but we do want to be able to portray a picture of, I think, the need, which we keep hearing about in comments. That certainly needs to be brought forward. And I'm hoping that the administration and the building committee can help explain in a way that kind of quells the community and what they want to know about where does everything fall and what is really needed and what is the whole picture going to look like and what am I getting for this particular price tag or this plan versus that plan. Again, that's communication and
I'll try to, I don't have much voice, so I won't say too much. Just a couple things. One, I think that's really the crux of what we're all going to be doing, is desired and required. Because the community wants to know that. What are the desired? What are the required? How we define that is something, I don't have the answer to that right now. And I don't think tonight we can do that. I think that's really a deep thing that we're going to have to talk about. And it's really, I agree with you, that is really a nuts and bolts of this. And I think the community wants to know that, so we're going to have to define that somehow. I don't think we can wait for a building committee. I think we have to find that before that. And then they're going to develop that more, as we go along. But I think that's going to be the real meat of what we do and what we put forward. And that's going to be with all of us working, together to try to figure out what that means.
You might just ask a question. So your thinking on it is that we should continue our deliberations to kind of identify amongst ourselves or through another ad hoc committee or whatever what the desired versus required. I just want to make sure I understand.
Not another ad hoc committee. I mean, tonight we're going to talk about the council, what we're going to do next.
Okay.
And then I guess that's where it's all going to come, because the Board of Ed has to come to us with your needs again and talk. And it's just, this is like, there's a lot of deep stuff, I think, that has to be still discussed. And we have to hear from you, too.
Thank you.
That's all.
Paul?
The Finance Facility Committee is going to get into our recommendations. I have thoughts kind of addressing what you said, Bill, but I want to talk about it in conjunction with kind of what some of our recommendations are, rather than get ahead of it. But maybe if we can do our presentation, I can come back and combine some of what my personal thoughts are.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody else? Liz, you had your hand up, but I don't know.
In light of Paul's comments, I'll wait until the Finance ad hoc committee's
That's going to keep us awake and going. Coming out of that. Okay, I don't see any more questions, comments. You know where to find me and other members of the committee. If you have anything else, we can follow up. Thank you, everybody.
Chair of the Facility and Finance Ad Hoc Committee. I'm going to make some brief comments tonight. I'm going to review the charge of our committee And then I'm going to have the town manager, Kathy Egan, walk us through the findings and recommendations of the Facility and Finance Ad Hoc Committee. But first, I'd like to recognize all the members of our committee. So please raise your hand as I read your name. Bruce Charette, member of the Town Council. Paul Cianci, member of the Town Council. Liz Fitzsimmons, Board of Education. Christine Arnold, Board of Education. Sharon Mazzocchi, Town Resident. Michael Smith, Town Resident. And those are the voting members. Then we also had non-voting members participating in the committee. Kathy Egan, the Town Manager. Kathy Greeter, Superintendent of Schools. Kim Nguyen, Assistant Superintendent of Schools. Vince LaFontaine, School Business Administrator. Tim Harris, Director of School Facilities. Matt Ross, Director of Technology, Farmington Public Schools. Kat Krajewski, Management Specialist. Joe Swetke, Director of Finance. Nancy Nickerson, our Town Council Chair. And Chris Fagin, the Chair of Board of Education. I want to thank everyone in the Facility and the Finance Committee. Your participation in the committee was greatly appreciated. Both committees' findings and recommendations will be very valuable to the future building committee. Next, I'd like to review the charge of our committee. If we could change the slides. So this is the charge of that our committee was given. Such committee shall develop and present options to the Farmington Town Council and Board of Education on next steps for the Farmington High School facility utilizing the following information. The previous FHS Building Committee information and data. On our October 16th, 2018 meeting, we had a presentation from Superintendent Kathy Greeter and Principal Bill Silva on the previous Building Committee's options for a school project. The previous Building Committee came up with multiple options for an FHS school project, and we wanted to make sure that we reviewed the other options that did not go forth to referendum and make sure that this information is available for the next Building Committee to review. Town of Farmington financials, present and forecasted. During our committee's first few meetings, the Finance Director, Joe Swetke, walked us through the town's present and forecasted financials. This included projections of debt service, and we also created a working financial model that the next building committee can use to evaluate the financial impact of different options for a new school project, including the tax impact. Community input and public informational meetings. We held a November 8th, 2018 meeting at the Farmington High School auditorium where we allowed the public to comment on the previous project that went to referendum as well as what the public would like to see in a new project. It was very beneficial to hear from the public, and we will continue to elicit public feedback throughout the entire process. And I think we've all heard tonight through the public comments and the presentation that communication is certainly a key to this process. Results of the citizen survey poll focused on the FHS facility. On November 7th, 2018, we held a joint meeting with the FHS Community Survey Ad Hoc Committee to review the findings and recommendations from the citizen survey. We had a good discussion, and members of both committees had an opportunity to ask questions. Information from experts in school construction. On October 16th, 2018, we had a meeting where we had a presentation from the towns of Guilford and Wethersfield. This helped us to understand what made their school project successful and what challenges they faced. We also received feedback and recommendations from both towns regarding our previous process to develop a school project and bring it to referendum. Now I'll ask the town manager, Kathy Egan, to walk us through the findings and recommendations.
Good evening, everyone. One of the things someone said tonight, and I think this was a really important thing and what our committee really worked on, and I think the term was lessons learned. And that is something that I think what this committee tried to do throughout the process. And when you saw the charge of the committee, is that we listened to everyone. And the whole idea was, again, what were the lessons? What did we learn and what can we do better so that when we go again and have a new building committee, we can learn from some of our mistakes. We can learn from what we were good at. And our committee jotted down throughout the process, throughout when we met for the months, all different things that we kept on hearing over and over again. And we were able to put it in what I would call 3 different buckets. It was the process, it was the communication, and it was the financial. And each one of these we're going to go through, and it's going to talk about what our findings were and what our recommendations were. So the first is the process recommendations. So we wanted to find out, when we had our process, did the building committee, the town council, the Board of Education, what was our process? Did we do it correctly? Was there anything that needed to be changed? And the first thing that we looked at is our ordinance, because we do have a building code ordinance. It's chapter 53, and it's how we do building projects. And we learned that updating our ordinance was not necessary, as our ordinance clearly outlines the process. And it's been determined that our process is consistent with other building projects in other communities. We also learned that one of the other things that we talked about with recommendations is that our committee said, in order to generate competition, maybe the next building committee should explore engaging multiple firms in the design process and project costs to address the statement of needs, doing an option A and an option type of B. They also said that include in a new building option and determine the cost on the existing Farmington High School site and other locations. According to the survey, 48.3% of the respondents agree that they would support a new high school in a different location if space could be identified for the purchase. The next process finding we found was that although 74.1% of survey respondents support a project with more than the minimum requirements, 88% of those surveyed agreed that required versus desired needs to be distinguished in public communications. So some of our recommendations were that we need to show and clearly communicate the project's required versus desired upgrades to the public. We need to define what is required and desired. And we used some samples, refer to the matrix document, which was in everyone's packet, created by the Farmington High School Facility and Financial Committee as a sample to prioritize the statement of needs. We also, another recommendation was highlight and communicate the benefits of the proposed project to the public. One of the things that we felt was missing was that what was the benefits of doing these projects? We don't think we highlighted that enough. The next process finding is that the previous building committee did not include the option of a cost of doing nothing or a renovation in the existing Farmington High School footprint, which would have been helpful in determining a baseline price and the required upgrades. So our process recommendations for that would be we would require the architect to include a cost for the do nothing option, physically maintaining the Farmington High School in its current form for a 30-year period, as well as the option for renovation in the existing footprint of Farmington High School to determine a baseline price for the required upgrades. And Guilford had did something similar to that, and it was called the do nothing option, which they felt was very helpful of getting information out to the public. The next finding was that although the previous building committee process was effective in vetting options that ranged from a renovation as new, renovation addition, and a new building to meet the statement of needs and the educational specifications, they did not effectively communicate those options to the public. No one really realized that the building committee did vet all those different options. They spent a lot of time going through it, looking at it, and picking what option they thought was the best. So they did do that, but unfortunately, that was never really communicated correctly to the public. The public never realized that the building committee did that. So the recommendation would be the next building committee should show the public how they arrived at the proposed project. They should prioritize the option and refer to the Guilford matrix document. Guilford put a document out that showed every option, and how they prioritized it. That was something, like I said, that the other building committee did. It just never went out to the public. The next process finding was, according to the survey, the previous building committee process was effective in communicating the needs of the Farmington High School facility. Approximately 2/3 of all residents surveyed were aware of most of the needs of the Farmington High School facility. The process recommendations would be use the survey results and the previous building committee data as references throughout the process, engage the community throughout the process through surveying and other methods to receive feedback, and engage the state legislative delegation to maximize state reimbursement. The next bucket that we talked about was communications, and this was the findings and recommendations. The first communication findings which was discussed from the last committee, is that friends, family, neighbors, co-workers, printed local newspapers, Farmington Patch, and the Farmington newsletter are 3 main ways that people get information about the school system in the town. And someone had mentioned in the audience today, I think this is an easy recommendation, is that we should be increasing the number of town newsletters to get information out to the public. The next communication finding was outside the box thinking is necessary to communicate, necessary to encourage public participation. Some of the things that our committee thought about was, first of all, reviewing the capabilities of the architect to support marketing efforts throughout the project. Communicate to the public that the town's dedicated webpage on the project can be distributed and reproduced. Run bus trips from the senior center and the senior housing and New Horizons to the Farmington High School for tours. Coffee with the committee. It's like, for instance, I don't know if anyone's seen like coffee with the cops at the Starbucks. They thought something coffee with the committees at, go to Starbucks and the committee would be there, because again, it's the water cooler. It's what your neighbors are saying. The chair report with bullet points after each meeting to distribute to the public via newsletter and post on the website. Research project engagement platforms to sync with our website. Engage civic groups, diverse demographics in the public participation to reach a broader audience. The Exchange Club, the Rotary Club, the Youth Sports, the Tunxus Seniors, the Chamber of Commerce, the religious organizations. Hold as many meetings as possible at the Farmington High School facility. The other communication findings were that the building committees, the previous building committee's communication was complex and difficult to understand. Our recommendation is use clear and concise communication. Refer to the updated statement of needs, 1-page document created by the Farmington High School Facility and Financial Committee. The next finding was that the previous building committee did not use data and information to their full advantage to support the message. There's lots of data out there that the building committee was not using it to their advantage. So the committee recommended to present data and information to strengthen the community's message. Refer to Guilford's map document illustrating funding for school projects in Connecticut. Reference other building project costs. Compare on a cost per square footage basis. Find comparable projects with similar design. Include timelines and impact. And one of the other things that they talked about was having the election enforcement's state agency present to the building committee early in the process about what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. The other communication findings was that successful large-scale building projects generally have a strong interest group attached to it. The next bucket of information was financial, and the financial findings were as follows. The survey had determined that there is support for our large-scale building project. According to the survey, 74.1% of respondents support a project that is more than the minimum requirements. A project budget from the beginning of the process is beneficial for both marketing the project and knowing the financial impact on the residents. The cost of the past project was not determined until late in the process, and the referendum occurred soon thereafter, therefore making it difficult to communicate information to the public. To communicate your message effectively, people need to hear the message at least 7 times. The recommendations were before establishing a new building committee, a project's financial impact should be evaluated by the town council by reviewing the long-term forecasting that was presented to the committee. The town council should set the range of the net municipal cost of the project for the committee. In the charge of the committee, the town council should require periodic reports from the building committee throughout the process, including financial projections. The next financial findings was the cost of the previous project and the tax impact was perceived as too complicated and inconsistent. The recommendations are the cost of the project should be communicated early and often. According to the survey, 41% of the respondents could not recall or did not know the price of the last project. The financial information needs to be presented and communicated in a clear and consistent manner. Refer to the marketing materials from successful projects in other municipalities. Refer to best practices on municipal bonding. When issuing debt for the project, consideration should be given to various financial options such as a principal skip. And this was referred to in our debt presentation dated 9/18/2018. So that's our recommendations and findings, and we can answer any questions.
Bill? Yeah, just a real quick question. Did the Guilford process have a projected budget at the beginning? In your financial findings, you're recommending that we have a projected budget out there at the beginning of the process. Did Guilford do that?
Does the committee members remember, did Guilford have that?
I don't think they talked about that.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. Liz, did you? Oh, other questions or comments?
Well, I was just going to add to the Guilford thing that they did talk about that they had a very clear picture of what their debt and financial situation was. They were in a much different situation than the town of Farmington when they took on this project. So, I mean, they had like less money in their fund balance, in their rainy day fund. They did not have a AAA bond rating. And so they had a very clear picture of what their financial picture was. I don't know, which is what this subcommittee did. So we really dug down deep into all of the debt service, what the debt service going out would be, taking into account all of the debt that the town is anticipating taking on for capital projects, for all of the debt that is foreseen. So it's a very thorough debt analysis. So, and some of that was based on what Guilford had said that needs to be done, that you really need to do when you're taking on a project like this. So, but that question did not come up.
Can I add? So just to add to what Liz was saying, also, which I thought was very interesting when Guilford presented, that they definitely worked with their state legislator to get a bigger return. Farmington was, I think it was 20%, I believe it was, 28%. And I don't remember the number, if anybody on the committee remembers, but Guilford was able to work with their legislator to get a higher reimbursement rate for their new high school project. So that's another reason what we got out of it and we put into our recommendation.
So the reimbursement, I was under the impression, and this is actually something I'm learning, there's kind of like a set statutory reimbursement rate, but are you suggesting that the way Guilford worked the project, they're actually able to kind of exceed what the statutory reimbursement rate would otherwise have been because of the way they did the project and set up for certain grants and things like that?
I don't know specifically on how they did the project. I just know that they worked with their legislator based on their project needs or the needs for the school, and they were able to pass legislation to get a higher reimbursement rate.
So I think there are always ways that if you are in close contact with your state representatives, that you can do things like that. There are grants above and beyond any kind of reimbursement rates. I do know that we did have a visit at the Board of Ed from the state representatives, and we did have a firm commitment from them that they would work with us on this project, and they are very committed to this project and very committed to the high school in particular being successful in getting as much from the state as we can, and that obviously time is of the essence because because of the state situation, but that they want to help us get as much as we can, and that they will work with us. So you can do that, and Guilford did do that. Of course, that was years ago, but we're here now, and they will work with us.
Nancy, I think Paul has information for you.
Just want to credit Sharon Mazzocchi, who came very prepared with numbers that she just brought me. So Guilford's grant was $25.6 million. Their municipal cost was $64 million, which obviously is a much bigger share that the state took on. I think most of it was because Guilford's rates are just higher than ours. Taking a step back, I was involved with the Branford project right next door from that. I do know Branford, whose rates are also much higher than ours, we also took some statutory measures to help increase the grant there. I don't think in the case of Guilford that that's what it was. I think that's just more of an example of their rates starting higher than ours are.
The rate under whatever the statutory scheme was better.
Every town in the state has two rates, right?
Right.
So ours are 19 and 29. Hartford's are 90 and 80. Greenwich's are whatever. There's a scale. So Guilford's are just higher on the spectrum than ours are.
I understand. Other questions, Mark?
I guess just a question for the committee going into this process. Thank you again for your work on it. Has there been any consideration with this, obviously how this is going to impact the bond rating? That'll be discussed, I guess, as things take shape more. Is there going to be any type of consideration to the K-8 facility report? Because last year we had to bond some of those projects, and there is a long-term 20-plus year of projects coming down the line. Obviously, we can't keep bonding short-term projects, but I mean, I guess that's obviously up to the council and how we want to move forward with that. But obviously, that's something that's going to have to be considered because, I mean, with that report, I mean, we just approved our capital move forward, we're looking at roughly short-term about 34 million, and it could be up towards to 60 million, I think was the final number on that. That's an additional cost with our schools that'll be coming down the pike as well. Now, whether we bond some of that or it's incorporated into capital, obviously we don't know at this point because it's going to come incrementally. But what I'd like to know is at some point if there's going to be consideration that is a big question mark that's kind of hanging out there in terms of an impact of our bond rating. It's like a wild card because, hopefully, it has to be done according to the report, but we just don't know how it's going to be done. So I guess that's just a consideration.
The committee did do a complete forecast, and they added the whole Fryer report into the forecast, and so that was included. And we worked with the school system about with the superintendent and the finance people about how it would be phased. So when in this debt report, that's all it included, plus all the future town projects too that we could think of, and it's 7 years now, so not just 5 years. So all of that has been analyzed. So when the council goes through the debt report, all the debt, and including the Fryer report and how that would be phased, was included in it. So when the council looks at that report, everything will be included in it.
And it doesn't matter whether it's bonded in capital or not.
Well, we tried to show how we would actually do it, and so I think it's a combination of both. And so as part of the Fryer report, I think that the school wants to spend a certain amount each year as cash, and then if we're going to be bonding things every so often too, so we incorporated that into our forecast and into the planning.
So you guys have an estimation what you think you might be bonding for the K-8 report? Or?
No, we actually, they tried to phase it out what we could afford, and I forgot, Kathy, what our numbers were, or Joe, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we did look at the report and said this is how much we would be doing. I think once every 2 years, I think we did a bond once, and then we had the certain amount of cash going out. And so again, they're planning documents, things can change, but we did try to incorporate everything in and how we would normally do things, which would be, some of it would be cash and some of it would be bonding.
Okay. We spent quite a bit of time discussing the impact on the bond rating, because that is something that the town of Farmington is proud of. I mean, only 15 or 16 municipalities in the entire state of Connecticut have a AAA bond rating at this point. So we did spend quite a bit of time discussing that with Joe Swetke, and interestingly enough, it's debated in the financial community about the import of the bond rating, the AAA bond rating. And there are other rating agencies that we could shift to that are more, that take a holistic approach of the town and your financial responsibilities that we could get a AAA bond rating with. We could shift to a different rating agency. But anyway, if something were to happen, but the way that we looked at it, it didn't look like it was actually going to impact our bond rating in any of the out years. The way that it was looked at with all of the debt included. I mean, there's no guarantee. You never know what's coming down the road, but it did look like we were in pretty good shape with a couple of years that came pretty close, but it didn't really look like we were going to be outside of any of the parameters of what would affect our bond rating. And actually, Joe mentioned that sometimes you get a better rate when you don't have as good of a bond rating. It depends on what the market was looking to, who they're looking to sell bonds to, actually. So it's an interesting market. It's not all that it really, it is what it is. And a lot of times the bond rating agencies know that you are investing in your community and you're investing in something that's extremely important for your community. So, you know, it's a good investment. So it's really not, you're not going to take that big of a hit. We did spend a lot of time talking about it.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Liz said, we did spend a lot of time on it, and it was definitely communicated to us that having a steady debt helps your bond rating, your AAA rating. So
right.
Trying to avoid these huge ups and downs that could definitely impact your AAA rating. So really, Joe did a great job in trying to make sure that our debt is pretty much steady, and that's the type of analysis that he put in. So
I think one of the things too that he talked about was I think it's 2 years from now that it drops off. So that's as you're talking about, and Bruce, that it levels, so that as we move forward, if we can get something forward now with the high school, by the time it comes on board, other things drop off, so we can continue to have our high bond, you know, and keep it level. So those are the kinds of things we're going to have to talk about as a council, how we're going to address all of it. But be assured that the fryer was in there, everything was in there when you talked about it. Just so important to make sure we're aware of all of it, you know.
I wanted to get back to, Bill, your initial kind of thought. So the reason I wanted to wait is because I guess part of my thoughts are a little bit reflective of the competitive design mentioned in here. And without getting into all the weeds of it, I know it's 9:59, but I guess what I'd like to see, at least, is through competition in the design process, multiple options coming forth to the town council, and the town council, which is going to probably be the next town council, picking an option, sending it to the people. If it passes, great. If it doesn't, there's another option right there ready to go. Now, how you get there, there's a lot of weeds in between that can be talked about, probably not tonight. But at least part of my thought process is there's kind of two competing theories right now in town. One is we can put the same project up and it'll pass. We just have to message it differently or change how we do it and the same thing will pass. And there's another theory that we need to scale it back to varying degrees. Reasonable people can see it differently. My hope is that if we put the same project up again and it did fail, that we wouldn't have to wait another 2 or 3 years to come up with a third try, right. That we have something right there. You know, as a father with kids ages 3 and 1, I have all day for this school to get built. But as a town councilor who's looking at, you know, kids coming through this school in the near future, I'd like to see something done quickly. So as a starting point to that process, I think giving the design firms some kind of leeway on, okay, if we were to see some options just as good as last time, everything we had last time, maybe it's a new site, maybe it's the same site. Other options that we're scaling back on, what are we scaling back on? What are the things that, where we're spending a lot of money on? Is it glass in some areas? Is it, changing how we use the word clusters? That came up at a previous meeting during public comment. So that's kind of my take of what it's worth. It's just me personally, but that's my logic at least.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mark, did you want to go ahead? Sure. Okay. Liz.
So I had a question about the desires versus needs. Like, I guess it's semantics, really. I just don't really like the word desires. It makes it sound like it's something extravagant that, we're asking for all these things that we desire in the school. And I think that a lot of times, like, if you put something like a word desire next to a word like require, it's a very stark contrast in words, right? I mean, so I think there could be better wording maybe for that. I mean, if I were asked, I didn't take the survey, but if I were asked that question on the survey, I would have also said, yes, I'd like to know the difference between what's desired and what's required. I mean, the way the question was asked, I'm surprised 100% of people didn't want to know what the desires versus the requirements are, because that's a question that who wouldn't want to know what the desires versus the requirements are? Like, I'm thinking desires, what do they want in there? Like it sounds like something desirable, right? So I think if you're putting the desires as like the glass versus, well, could it be something cheaper and not glass? Is that required in the school? But desire seems like a very wantful word, right? I just think there could be a better word for it because it's not real. I don't think it really expresses the true meaning of what we're trying to get across. It makes it sound extravagant, or because I think that the thing is that there's a lot of things that might seem like they're things that aren't really needed in the school, but they really do impact programming. And I think Chris said it at one of the last meetings best, like, they don't need a bigger cafeteria. Like, that's, that's extravagant. Like, when I went to school, the cafeteria was so small, we had to, stand and eat. But, it does impact programming because we have to have so many lunch waves and we have to start the lunch so early. And it's not conducive to a good learning environment because kids don't want to eat lunch at 9:50 in the morning. So, you need to have those things. You can't have a building that goes from all the way over there to all the way over here because it's stressful. We have enough stress and anxiety in the day. These kids don't need to be worried about whether they're going to get to class on time. So, that might seem like what you'd consider to be a desire, but it's really it's a need. It's a requirement. You can't have them worried about that sort of thing. So it impacts programming on so many levels. So I think that, to me, it's a semantics issue. I think we all here want the same thing. I think that we all are trying to get to the same place. So I just don't want to have people reading the wrong thing into a word. That's all.
Well, people from the committee can talk about it. How long, I was only an ex officio. How long was it discussed? And there were many you go ahead, you guys can all. That took a long time.
That's just my thought.
No, I understand. It took the committee how long to figure out words. But Beth?
I would agree. And maybe we don't like what we came up with because it doesn't really help us, because I think it's a lot more nuanced than desired versus required and needs versus wants. And I hope we can get the community to understand that, but it's really upon whoever's on the building committee and in elected positions to figure that out and how to communicate that, because categorizing things in those, it's really either or categories, I don't know this really going to be helpful.
Ellen, go ahead.
Well, I think, in my opinion, I think that we could be making an assumption that a list of desires is a long list. Because personally, I don't think it's a long list. we are going to be inundated with the dilemma we're in, what we're sitting in tonight, with requirements. So it might be as simple as desires could be a pool, a culinary space, architecturally designed patios, black box theater. Those are desires. Would they benefit education in Farmington? Absolutely. But so I guess what I hope that the building committee would keep in mind in the community that our list of desires could be very small at this point. And even with the last building project, I think, I don't think any even come to mind. If someone can think of any desires that were in that last building project, maybe you can think of them. But so it could be a very short list we're talking about.
So I just want to add a couple things, just because as I was listening to everyone talk, I know that the ad hoc finance committee created a matrix document for a level of impact. To me, I think, and I heard Liz say it multiple times, impact. I think that could be beneficial to help educate the community of, by doing X, Y, and Z, how this will impact not only their education or our community and stuff like that. And I think just sitting here and listening to that, that resonated with me. When Liz was saying impact, I'm like, well, we started doing an impact matrix grid. I think you guys, the Board of Ed, reviewed it and gave something back to us. It's probably not at the level that it needs to be yet, but I think that could be another word to use rather than desire. How does this impact the education or our children or our community, our shelter? I mean, there's a lot there that the community wants to know, that if we do this, this is what we're going to get out of it. And I think when I hear desire and require, I think I kind of hear people saying, well, what am I going to get out of this? And I think the level of impact could tell them that. So that's just a thought or a comment that I just wanted to share.
Edward. Oh, sorry.
So I think I agree with a lot of the comments being said. I think we all realize this is something that has to be addressed, because we did see 88% of the respondents want some sort of comparison of these requirements or desired or whatever words we come up with, and maybe it is semantics. And also just to remind everyone, I think something else that we talked about, I don't know if it was the joint committee meeting with the survey committee. We also talked, I think, about how requirements could even be in two different categories. Like you have the state educational compliance requirements, and then the requirements as far as the people in the town of Farmington, which may be different from the people in New Britain or Hartford or any other place in Connecticut. So I think we have to kind of think about that as well as we're discussing this.
Any other comments right now? The council is going to, number 3 on our agenda for tonight, is going to move to accept the reports.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move to accept the reports from the Farmington High School Community Survey Ad Hoc Committee and the Farmington High School Facility and Financial Ad Hoc Committee as presented.
Second.
Is there discussion from the council? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Before we go to number 4, do you, Chris, have anything else to?
I'm all set right now.
You're all set right now, okay. So our 4th item is to discuss next steps for the Farmington High School facility. So this is next steps for our council and what direction we should go in at this point. There, do you want to?
Well, I think I'm just going to throw this out there just so all of us could talk about it. I think our next step is probably taking the results from both committees and summarizing in a bullet point format to start crafting what our next charge should be for a building committee. I think a lot of great data has been provided. There's recommendations from the survey committee as well as recommendations from the financial committee. And I think those recommendations should be detailed as bullet point format for us to discuss as a council as we build the next building committee charge.
I think one of the things we have to do as well is what is the process? And as a council, actually identify what the process is for us to move forward, to present and to look at another building. You know, I mean, first we have to get a statement of needs from the board, of course, but we need to start talking about our process. So I'd like to see that happen with us, if that's agreeable with the rest of the council. And maybe Bruce and I can sit together with Kathy and start beginning what the process will be and what the next steps would be for the council in this, with our charter and, you know, look through all of that. So if that's acceptable, I think that's what we'd like to do. The council would agree to that. Would I have a consent? Go ahead, sure.
Can you give me an idea of, or all of us an idea of what might come out of, I don't know if that's one meeting or a couple of meetings, or how long that might take, and what would come out of that to the council?
Of how we would move forward, what's necessary as far as our charter's concerned to move forward to, I think we all know we want to have a building committee ultimately to move forward with a project. How do we do that as a council? We haven't done this before as this council to set forth a building committee. We first know we have to get a charge from, a statement of needs, but we would sit with Kathy. I don't think it's going to take that long, Beth. But I think we need, what the next step right now is going to be our budget. And we're going to be really in the middle of that with a lot of budget meetings. But in the meantime, Bruce and I could sit with Kathy and go through and then bring to you what we feel the steps would be as we proceed toward a building committee. I don't think it's going to take that long, but I don't want to have it in the middle of our budget either. I also think that it's after our budget that we'll sit down and really put together the charge for a building committee once the Board of Ed comes to us. But I'd like to do that. I think we talked about that right after the budget's done. So.
I have a follow-up question. So after budget would be after the referendum or after our work as a council on the budget? I don't know if you've thought that far ahead.
Yeah,
when I hear budget, I think referendum is kind of the end of the budget.
We talked about maybe May. Kathy was out, April.
Usually the budget process ends, I think it's end of April.
Once the referendum passes for all of us. I'm going to be very optimistic. So that would be about the timeline, and then we'd be ready to bring you some information. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I'm assuming that a good portion of the information is in the recommendation, besides some of the detailed information from our charter of creating a building committee. So the assumption here is that 90% of the information that was presented tonight, I know not every single detail would be in the charge, but at least 90% of the information that was presented from both the ad hoc and the financial committee would be part of the next building committee charge. And it would be, and I'm sorry, Nancy, it would be more of at a high level because we have to discuss it as a council. This is just bringing something forward for us to discuss.
Yeah, we're not setting one. We first have to have a charge, a statement of need from the board, officially. Thoughts? Go ahead, Pat.
frankly, it sounds like it's delaying the process further than necessarily needs to be. As a council, I appreciate town staff is very busy on budget already. I do understand that, but I do, as a council, we don't really start really diving into the budget for a few more weeks still. And I would like to see there being some movement forward towards a charge for a building committee, so that way it's moving forward this summer. And I don't know how that timing fits in if your discussions don't start until mid-April. I think there's a lot that needs to happen. I think there's, a lot of discussion that the town council needs to have. And I think it's just pushing these decisions further down. So I'm curious, I guess, more information about timing and why it has to wait.
Well, until we get an actual statement of needs from the Board of Ed, officially we don't set a charge. So we wouldn't be doing a charge until then. I look at it as doing our process now. I don't know.
And Madam Chair, I would assume that if we get a statement of needs from the Board of Ed, that we potentially could start doing the high-level thing to bring it forward to the council as soon as we can. Sure. Wouldn't that be possible?
They're in the middle of their budget. You start your budget February 3rd, I think.
Right. So the assumption here, and I agree with Patty, we don't want to delay if we can avoid delaying, because we would like to finalize a building committee charge to move forward as soon as possible. And I think that knowing that the bulk of the data we have here, the one piece that we're probably missing right now is the official handoff from the Board of Ed. Knowing that we're all going to be in budget cycle, we should be able to hopefully pull this information out of these findings from both committees.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So I have a question on the statement of needs, having not been someone who has had to form a building committee before. I appreciate that we need to get a statement of needs from the Board of Ed, but is there a change in the statement of needs?
That's not up to us. And in light of the information that's here in these two committees, they may have a discussion about how they want to refine what they want to do for the statement of needs, and with the last referendum of what they want to do next. I'm not sure. I can't say that. So, CJ.
I appreciate the interest of trying to move things
take a mic.
forward and not delaying. But as the fiscal authority in town, our main and most important duty is to get through budget. And I think, as we all know, sitting at this table, it's not a fast process. I don't want to get involved in too many things at one time. I think we need to obviously address this. But one of the concerns of the public that they stated through our survey was they felt we rushed things through. I don't want to give anyone the illusion that we're trying to rush anything through this next go around trying to put together a building committee. I think we'll have plenty of time once we get through the process. I think it's great if Nancy and Bruce can kind of set the groundwork and put us in good position to hit the ground running once we're done with the budget. But I don't think we can do too much with creating a charge while we're going through the budget. So I hope we're not considering that right now.
So I'm sorry. Do you have a comment?
So I think the work of this process, we all learned a lot from these ad hoc committees and just being in the community after the referendum, is that we probably want to really look at the charge of the building committee, whether it's making it more specific in some areas around dollar amount, timeline, some things that could make it a better process. I'm wondering if even drafting and kind of coming up with some ideas, bullet points like Bruce mentioned, prior to getting
a statement of needs from the board. We know we have to come up with our own charge, a new charge for a new building committee. I'm wondering if we could make good use of time, not to formally start the process, but to at least get those things flushed out and talked about in a small group is fine. But so that we're not waiting to get that piece of paper and statement of needs from the Board of Ed and then get to work on that and just putting us out that many more weeks or whatever that's going to look like.
Well, my hope was that with Bruce and I and Kathy getting together that we would be moving it along as far as the process and all of that and the charges concerned. We'd be working on that and be able to come to you in April after, with information. So that would, in my mind, that was moving it along in this process on the side while the budgets are going on. So.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I would assume, we're talking about April, but let's just say everything is all good.
February.
Yeah, but let's just say everything is all good and the budget passes and it could be sooner. Yeah. To discuss from a council perspective of what the building committee charge could be. If the three of us are working during the budget process with Kathy on bullet pointing what the proposed charge would be, knowing that we will get a statement of needs, and then when we're done with our piece with the budget, we already have something in front of us to discuss as a group.
Yeah. So if that's okay, that's how we'll move forward.
But referendum is late April, early May. I believe it's late April this year. So
right.
It's at least until then.
Yeah. I mean, after going through the budgets, I don't think you want to be in the middle of that during budget. So it's just my feeling.
Madam Chair, we're discussing it, and we will address the statement of needs issue within the Board of Education and with as much speed as possible, given the context of the ongoing budgets, bring something forth to the council.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't want to pressure. I didn't mean that to pressure you. I mean, you have a lot going on. You start next week. It isn't even a month. You're in the middle of yours right now, so.
Without speaking for my other board members, I don't think we feel pressured about this issue. This is something we want to see done, so.
Well, we do too, though, please understand, So, okay, so are we good? Okay. All right, so our next motion is to adjourn.
And if I may address, we were discussing also, we weren't sure the entire proper context, but just to be, as a housekeeping matter, to be, button everything up, we would like to also approve the findings. So just make sure if it was yours, both of us will do it. So if I can have a motion to accept the reports and findings from the FHS Community Survey Ad Hoc Committee and the FHS Facility and Financial Ad Hoc Committee. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's approved.
Thank you. And again, I just want to, Chris, you said it nicely before and that my voice is gone, but thank everybody for all the time and effort. There's a lot of work and a lot of time with all these committees, with all of you, and with the people from the public that were part of these committees. So thank you very much again. So with that.
And I'll go first. Motion to adjourn the Farmington Board of Education joint meeting with the Town Council.
Motion.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned.
Madam Chair, I motion to adjourn the Farmington Town Council meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions. Okay, thank you.